Thursday, April 14th, 2026, and this meeting is hereby called to order. Adequate notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6. Specifically on January 28th, 2026, proper notice was sent to electronic news sources of record, filed with the municipal court at the Township of Bridgewater, and posted on the municipal bulletin board. Please be aware of the Zoning Board of Adjustment policy for public hearings. No new applications will be heard after 9:30 p.m., and no new testimony will be taken after 10 p.m. And then you can read the rest in terms of hearing assistance and other accommodations should they be required. You can make the arrangements for those in advance. All of our meetings are recorded, and we have transcribers here as well, but they're recorded and broadcast on YouTube, and people are able to not only watch live, but also make the replays. So when we're addressing each other, when we're providing testimony, we need to speak into the microphone and make sure that everybody can hear us clearly for that twofold purpose of having anybody in the audience hear us and the recordings as well. So with that, I'm going to invite you to stand if you're able and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we have a few missing people today, but Nancy Probst, who was our expert at just about everything, is not here this evening. Catherine, who's the expert on all other things, is going to lead us through and play some of Nancy's role today. So you're going to start with the roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kulak?
Yes.
Mr. Whiteley?
Here.
Ms. Amin?
Yep.
Mr. Franco?
Here.
Mr. Fresco?
Here.
Ms. Henderson-Rose?
Here.
Mr. Gajewski?
Here.
Ms. Wiseman? Here. Mr. Vesio?
Here.
Mr. Colucci?
Here.
Mr. Mignella?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. And our professionals are here,
Professionals, Mr. Oler?
Here.
Mr. Burr?
Here.
And Ms. Sarmet is here.
and Ms. Armet is here. Very well. Before we get started, I'm going to open the meeting to the public for any matters not listed on today's agenda. So if you're a member of the public and you have a matter that you need to address this board on, that's not part of tonight's agenda, you have a few seconds to come up, but seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the meeting. Thank you. Now, we have some minutes that we'd like to approve, and chatting briefly with Mrs. Amin, the minutes that we're approving is for the Zoning Board of Adjustment regular meeting minutes, December 9th, 2025. And Mrs. Amin has gone through and made the various changes, but
I will make a motion to approve the minutes as changed by, Nancy made some changes on it. So the revised version was already emailed to everyone. Everyone got an email with the revisions on it. So.
And Rich, they were just editorial type changes?
They were just editorial, yes.
we're-
And you have them in your.
Yeah, I saw that earlier.
Right.
Okay.
okay. So Mrs. Amin has made a motion to approve the minutes, and Mr. Widley has seconded. Do we have a roll call?
Yes, we have 6 eligible members. Mr. Kulak?
Yes.
Mr. Whiteley?
Yes,
Ms. Amin?
changes.
With the changes, yes. Ms. Amin?
Yes.
Mr. Fresco?
Yes.
Mr. Gajewski?
Yes.
Mr. Vesio?
Yes.
Thank you. So we have a few applications today. The first on our agenda is an initial hearing for application number 25024ZB Solar Landscape LLC. It's Block 303, Lot 8.04, 22 Van Vechten Drive. And representing the applicant is,
Good evening, Donna Jennings from the law firm of Willens, Goldman, and Spitzer.
welcome, Ms. Jennings. So we're going to let you get settled, but at the same time, let us know how you would like to proceed and with your opening statement and perhaps who you're going to call first.
Yes, I'll start with my opening statement, and I'll introduce the witnesses.
Very well, thank you.
Okay. As the board is aware, the applicant is seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval, a D1 use variance, and if deemed necessary, bulk variances for existing conditions to install rooftop community solar panels with associated ground and roof-mounted equipment on the existing buildings on property located at 22 Van Veeten Drive and identified as Block 303, Lot 8.04 on the township's tax map. As some of you may recall, we were here about a year and a half ago, also seeking use variance approval and site plan from this board for a similar project on Van Dern. And for those that aren't here, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on community solar. So Solar Landscape is the premier commercial rooftop solar developer in the country. As the leader in commercial real estate clean energy development, the applicant has invested heavily into its building capabilities to support the next phase of its growth. Over the last few years, the applicant has secured approximately $847 million in project investment and financing, enable it to grow its growth and create over 200 commercial rooftop solar projects to power over 50,000 households. The state first launched the Community Solar Program as a pilot program in 2018, and the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities has since established a permanent community solar program. Individuals and businesses are now able to greatly benefit from solar energy systems without needing to install solar panels on their own property. Instead, solar energy is generated off-site for use by members of the program who receive several benefits, including paying a reduced energy bill. Significantly, these community solar program projects are required to serve a majority of low and moderate income households. The record will reflect that the applicant satisfies both the positive and the negative criteria required to grant the use variance. The positive criteria is satisfied as a matter of law because the municipal land use law specifically recognizes solar energy facilities as inherently beneficial uses, or a use which is universally considered of value to the community because it fundamentally serves the public good. The record will further reflect that the applicant satisfies the negative criteria because the impact on the surrounding properties and the impact on the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance are de minimis. Generally, the proposed panels and equipment will not have any impact on the surrounding land uses with respect to noise, odor, aesthetics, or glare. There are also existing non-conforming conditions with respect to minimum required lot area, front yard setback, and one side yard setback. While variance relief is not required because the application does not worsen the deviations, the board should grant the use variance. If the board grants the use variance, any bulk variances would be assumed pursuant to Price v. Himeji. In support of the application, the applicant will rely on the testimony of the following witnesses: Courtney Breeze, who is the applicant's representative, Ryan Holosi, the site engineer, and Andrew Janu, our planner. As a matter of record keeping, we are in receipt of the following reports: the Planning Department report dated April 10th, 2026, the engineer/planner dated April 9th, 2026, zoning officer dated March 27, 2026, environmental/health dated April 6, 2026, fire official dated March 27, 2026, traffic safety police dated February 13, 2026, sewer utility dated February 12, 2026, and code enforcement dated February 12, 2026. So with that, I'd like to call up our first witness, Courtney Breeze. We can have her sworn in and we can begin.
So Ms. Breeze, would you raise your right hand? And, I'm going to have our professionals stand and raise their hands as well, please. You solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
You.
And your full name for the record?
Courtney Brees,
Spell your last name.
Breese.
And we also have? Thank you.
And Courtney, you can sit right over here next to me if you'd prefer. Oh. Or do you want to stand? It's your choice. Okay. And hopefully this works. Sounds like it's going to work.
So please recite for us a little bit about your background, credentials, and so on, and what you're doing here tonight.
Yes. So I work at Solar Landscape. I am a pre-construction manager. So we'll find out, we actually go over it. I do a lot of the due diligence on the properties for these projects to see if we can even use them for community solar.
And she's more of a fact witness as opposed to an expert like my other two witnesses.
And you work directly for Solar Landscape?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
And if you could, just for the board's benefit, can you just give a brief overview of Solar Landscape, who they are?
Yep. So Solar Landscape is the leading commercial and community solar developer in the U.S. We develop, install, and operate solar projects on commercial and industrial rooftops. We've deployed more than 400 megawatts of renewable energy projects across hundreds of projects and leased rooftops.
Okay, and when was Solar Landscape formed?
In 2012, and we've been the forefront of the community solar program since it started in 2018.
And where are you located?
Asbury Park,
And approximately how many employees you now employ?
about 350 employees.
And could you just, you indicated that you help with the due diligence site selection, so can you indicate to the board why this particular site was selected?
Yep, so we do the due diligence, again, to see if they're even able to be used for these projects. So that involves utility grid availability and capacity, amount of roof space, the age of the existing roof and the integrity of it, and then the structural stability of the building.
Okay, and in this particular project, do you have a lease agreement with the property owner?
Yes.
And can you confirm that you already have the equipment and panels and are ready to proceed if the board would grant an approval?
We do have the equipment and are ready for installation.
If you could just explain for the board how you go about the BPU approvals. What's the overall approval process and how do you get awarded?
So these projects are awarded through the Community Solar Energy Program that is run by the Board of Public Utilities. So this project was actually awarded to us in the 2024 program. The process for the BPU is submitting an application for review, and at minimum with the application, we have to provide an initial site plan of what we think we're going to be working with, conditional approval from the utility, and submission of non-ministerial permits, which would have been our zoning application for this.
Okay, and what benefits are there of community solar?
It's electricity at a discounted rate.
And how do you market that?
We like to work with the towns to send out newsletters, have hosted centers and libraries, senior centers, wherever we could possibly work with you guys on doing that.
Okay, and how do you ensure that a
Sorry.
majority of
Just
the,
have a quick question for you. Are your installations both commercial and residential, or commercial only as part of this program?
It's just, so it's a commercial installation. We use commercial rooftops, but these systems actually feed back into the grid. So that's what we're being awarded in these programs. They feed back into the grid, and the customers who sign up for the projects will be assigned to specific community solar projects because we have hundreds of them. And then they're awarded that discounted rate. So it goes through the utility and they get a discounted rate on their bill.
And part of your site selection and due diligence was, you mentioned the structural integrity of the roof and the building. Do you hire professionals who make that determination?
Yes, we hire professional engineers. They actually go out and do the investigations on the buildings and do the calculations, reports, all that sort of stuff for us.
Okay, great, thank you.
and if you could, just indicate how does solar ensure that the majority of the affordable housing households receive this benefit?
So it is a state requirement that 51% must go to low moderate income households. When a person is interested, they apply, and that is covered in the application process. The 51% can't be diverted to non-LMI customers or households or to specific individuals.
So LMI was just short for low moderate income?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Can you explain how customers receive the benefits and their discounted utility bill?
Yep. So it recently happened that the utilities moved to consolidated billing. So that's what I was explaining, is they will still get their one bill from the utility, and it reflects the discount that they are receiving from the solar program that they're assigned to.
Okay, and if you could just talk a little bit about the maintenance and security of the panels, like how do the panels get cleaned? How do you deal with snow? Those kind of things.
So we don't clean the panels. We rely on rainwater to clean them naturally. We don't move snow or remove snow, sorry. We allow it to melt naturally. And then our solar systems have monitoring systems that connect to our computers. They let us know if anything is not working properly, whatever the case may be, to let us know that we need to get out there to check on the system.
And how do you get up to the roof?
We use ladders or whatever is needed for the particular building. In this case, we're able to use an extension ladder and proper safety to access the building.
And can you explain why solar chooses wall-mounted versus ground-mounted equipment for the projects?
So the utility requires certain equipment for these installations to be operational. Due to the size and functionality, some equipment must be ground-mounted, while other equipment can be wall-mounted. But we work with the utilities to determine like best location on these properties to, least disturb the area, and like best way to connect to the existing electrical infrastructure for the utility.
And it is ultimately the utility company who dictates where the equipment's going to go?
Correct.
Okay. And can you address your construction timeline and any required staging that you might need for this project?
We're looking at August, September to start installation, and then mechanical completion by December.
And when would the facility be operational? Do you go online right away, or is there a certain delay?
We don't go online right away. We wait for the utility has to install their certain equipment, and then they also require their own inspections along with town inspections. And then once they do that, they will then issue, we call it PTO, which is permission to operate. And then we get the thumbs up that that system is on.
Okay. And can you just confirm the panel lifespan and address your decommissioning process?
So the panel lifespan is, 25 years. We have a decommissioning plan. And if that wasn't shared with you, we can absolutely share a copy of that with you. Per Solar Landscape's agreement with the property owner, all facilities must be removed and leased property must be returned to its original condition that it was in prior to the installation.
Just so I understand the decommissioning process, is that at the end of the useful life, or if the property hypothetically were sold, does that trigger a decommissioning?
No. So you have a lease agreement, so whoever were to buy the building, they would be buying your lease agreement.
Okay, so the lease agreement would govern and so on. I got
Correct.
that part. And then with respect to damage, though, during the normal course of operations, we have some pretty nasty storms, hail, things like that, that could potentially damage solar panels. How do you deal with that?
That's what we were talking about. We have our systems that let us know if anything is down, which would even be a cracked panel, damaged panel, anything like that. We will be able to tell that certain panels are not operating properly, and then we have an operations and maintenance team that we send out to upkeep the system. So they would replace, we would replace any panels that need to be replaced, anything like that.
I see. So if anything's damaged, as we were describing, your team comes out, evaluates, and says, we can replace this. I doubt it can be fixed, but if they could, they'll fix it, what have you, those kinds of things.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's all the direct questions I have for this witness.
Okay. So I'm going to ask the public if they have any questions. I'm sorry. Let me start with the board members, since I don't see any members of the public anyway, but I will start with the board members. Ms. Rose?
Yes, how do you select the site? Does the property owner come to you and say, I had this wonderful building, or do you drive around and say, that's a wonderful building?
So it's kind of a little bit of both. This particular property is a client that we have multiple buildings with them. So they will kind of let us know what they're working with. And then exactly that, like we have to look into the property first to even be able to see if we can use it. But sometimes, we do go out to promote and see if anybody is interested in leasing their rooftops to us.
Thank you.
Did you look at any other sites in Bridgewater?
Yeah, so we already have 3 and 5 Federn, I can't. Findern, there you go. Findern, approved by this board about a year and a half ago.
At the end of life, do you have to decommission, or can you refurbish?
We decommission, and then there's a recycle program, but I'm sure if possible, if we could sign up for, if we can get awarded another project through the BPU, we'd be able to
At the same
install another
location.
system, correct?
Yeah, so you would just update the
Yes.
whole system.
Yep.
And are the panels fed independently, or they're in series?
if I know exactly.
So each one does a home run back to the inverter?
They're all connected, interconnected, correct?
Interconnected.
And then run back to the inverter, and then that feeds back into or transformer, and then into the grid.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Questions from any board members for Ms. Bree's testimony?
Who is the owner of the building?
It's National Storage Associates,
Okay, it is a storage facility.
correct?
Is it a concrete structure?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I would have to double check.
It appears to be
I believe so.
clad with steel, and I'm presuming it's got a steel frame inside, but honestly, I didn't go inside to look at the construction, so I couldn't answer that directly. I'm sure somebody knows, which would be useful, but you're saying that your structural engineers have evaluated the building itself.
Correct. And they provide the calculations to us to let us know that it's able to hold a solar system, like the load of the solar system on it.
Okay,
They've
thank you.
installed similar rooftop solar panels on similar storage buildings?
Yeah, we've done at least 75 in New Jersey alone.
But you're asking specifically about a self-storage facility, or are you asking
A
about?
lot of them are on the self-storage facilities.
Well, this company in particular,
Yeah.
National Storage.
CubeSmart, we do a lot for them, too.
Public storage.
Thanks. Board professionals, questions for Ms. Breeze and her testimony?
Just one moment.
Oh, please, go ahead, Mr. Vesio.
So there's been instances with fires on roofs with solar panels. Like we actually had one in town at the ice skating rink north of 22. Is there anything inherent to the kind of design that you're providing here that helps mitigate fire hazards?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question.
Right. So we've had fires actually in town with solar panels on roofs. I guess it's a hazard that kind of comes along with these, especially if maintenance is not performed. Is there anything sort of kind of you designed to help mitigate fires from potentially spreading, providing roof access for fire department, anything like that?
A lot of that comes down to installation, where we have a safety team and a quality team that actually goes out through the process to double check to make sure everything's installed properly. 'Cause a lot of the times where fire happens, I used to do resi solar. A lot of the times fire happens of something not being installed properly or connected properly. So we have a team that goes out and double checks, and they go through photos, go to on-site visits for all of that. As for fire safety plan, I don't have one on hand, but we could absolutely provide something for that. We do have a safety and hazard plan that we could provide as well.
Okay. It's possible to make a condition for the applicant, if approved, that the fire department of the town takes a look at the design and provide maybe any access ladders as needed.
So the fire department signed off on it on February 26th and had no objection. So the building code requires certain setbacks between the panels and stuff like that, and the ridge line and everything, so the fire department can get up there and quickly put out a fire, et cetera. So your fire department has reviewed the site plan and the layout of but we could, if there's something else that you're looking for, we can certainly speak to them, but they didn't have any comments.
Are the panels mounted at an angle or on the flat?
They're going to be flat on your roof.
Okay.
I have a question.
Please, Mrs. Amin.
I don't know if you will answer it this or someone else will. What is the total kilowatt rating of all three buildings together when you, the rating, power rating of all this?
So the site engineer was going to address that, but if you're asking, the total number of homes that would be powered would be 69, and the kilowatts is 572,828 total.
Any other questions from the board members? Board professionals, questions for Ms. Breeze and her testimony?
Yes, I noticed that in the submission, there was a report for the decommissioning of a rooftop solar array. In your experience, has Solar Landscape had to decommission any facilities?
Not just yet, no.
What's the typical lifespan of one of these rooftop mounted?
About 25 years.
Okay,
So we have not hit our mark just yet.
And so they're only typically decommissioned, after 25 years. There's usually not a period where, the technology is outdated or something and they decide to decommission beforehand?
Correct. And if, again, if they're not operating properly, we're going to go out and, swap something out, whether it's panel, whatever it may be.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I had.
Thank you. Mr. Burr?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few questions. So as far as the approval process, I think you mentioned the utility company. Have they already reviewed and approved this? I assume PSE&G, or is that still pending?
Yes, we have to get approval from them at the beginning to even be able to apply
Okay.
for the community solar program.
And are there any other approvals outstanding at this point, or do you have everything in hand pending this board's approval?
We have everything in hand. It's just everything after that we would need to get.
Okay. And earlier, we heard mentioned by Ms. Jennings the prior project from a year and a half ago that was approved at the end of Van Vechten at the intersection of Findern. There were a few conditions in that approval, one of which dealt with some enhanced signage, safety signage. I see there's some signs on the engineer's plans. I just want to make sure that to the extent that we can replicate that condition with this approval, if we get to that point, that's something that's reasonable to you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and then also there was a condition, and there was a little discussion, but a condition requiring a decommissioning plan, a safety manual be submitted, which I know was submitted for the other application. You would agree to that as well?
Yep, I have those already
Perfect.
put together.
I don't think they were submitted, but you will submit them?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You just mentioned that you have to get the sign off from is it the BPU or is it the local utility itself that you're in partnership with on that approval?
We have to go through both. So the actual installation and initial approval is with the utility. So this is PSEG.
Yes.
We have to get that initial approval to even be able to apply to win projects for the community solar program. So we got their approval, then submitted our application to the BPU, and then we were awarded this project.
So would I be correct in saying that it's the public service, electric and gas, so to speak, that the strength of their approval is what allows you to move forward and have that assure the public that there's a level of safety here that you couldn't assure them yourself?
Correct, yeah, because they'll look into if there's grid capacity or availability, and that's kind of where we go through, go from there with the utility.
Okay, thank you.
One more question, if you would. Are nonprofit historic properties part of are they eligible to apply for the electrical benefit?
I'm pretty sure it's just residents. I have not heard anything about nonprofit, but we could absolutely find out and confirm too.
All right, thank you.
Well,
What happens if your organization goes out of business?
So if our organization goes out of business, this is a profitable system, so it will be sold if anybody wants to purchase it. And, again, it's profitable, so somebody buying it is very, very, very likely.
Can I make a comment on that? About a year and a half ago, I put solar on my house through a program, and shortly after we went live, the company went bankrupt, the financial end, and sure enough, they do sell off, and now I just deal with a different company.
Yeah,
That answers,
yes.
or there's a big demand for there is profit in it, they just had other issues.
Correct. So if one's not going to have it, another's going to take it over.
But right now, your organization has that alliance with the Board of Public Utilities and the utilities themselves. And so somebody coming in as a qualified buyer would have to meet those same requirements.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions, board members, professionals? Ms. Breeze, thank you for your testimony. Ms. Jennings?
Yeah, this time I'd like to call the site engineer, Ryan Holosi.
I don't think, we didn't swear him in yet, right?
don't see that.
No. Give it a minute.
Okay, it's up.
There it is.
Would you, let me swear you in before we get any further. Okay, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Your full name, please,
Ryan Holosi,
and spell your last name?
Hollosi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Donna, this document that's being handed out will be A1, and he'll describe what that is once
Sure.
they're handed out.
Yep. And so, Ryan, if you could, for the benefit of the board, please give your background and qualifications.
I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey since 2024. I've testified in front of numerous boards across New Jersey, but never in front of this board.
The board accepts qualifications?
Your license is current?
It's current and in good standing.
Any questions?
Just so I understand the affiliation, you work for Short Point Engineering, or
Yeah, I'm a
you are
project
Short
manager
Point Engineering?
for Short Point Engineering.
Okay, and is it yourself or is many members of the firm? I'm just curious, because I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, it's a small firm. There's about 5 of us.
5 of you? Okay, great. You want to share anything about your educational background, things like that?
I graduated with a civil engineering degree from the College of New Jersey, and I've been working in the civil engineering field for about 7 years now.
Great, thank you. So the board accepts your credentials. You can
Thank you.
continue.
Thank you. And just for the record, Ryan, you just handed out an exhibit that we're going to mark as A1. Can you just describe it for the record before we get into your testimony?
Yes, the first page of that exhibit is a zoomed-in equipment, just showcasing the equipment location. And then the second page is an aerial exhibit, which the existing aerial with our proposed roof-mounted solar panels in blue and the ground-mounted equipment in the southwest location, if you could see my cursor circling.
Okay, thank you. If you could then just confirm that your office has prepared the site plan we're going to discuss this evening,
Yes,
and if you could describe the existing site conditions.
yes, the property is known and designated as Block 303, Lot 8.04, and it's containing about 12.3 acres and is located within the M2 zoning district. It has frontages along Van Veeten Drive, and the surrounding property is industrial use. The site is currently developed with 3 two-story warehouse buildings and 1-story office building, and those will remain. And the existing building has a footprint of 44,232 square feet, and the height of the storage buildings are about 15 feet.
And if you could describe the applicant's proposal.
The applicant is seeking approval to construct roof-mounted solar panels and a roof-mounted inverter and associated ground-mounting equipment on the existing building. The ground-mounted equipment proposed includes 1 new utility pole, a transformer, a building-mounted panel board, and other associated equipment as located in the brown hatch where my cursor is located. The roof-mounted inverters is about 7 feet to the roof height, but it will not exceed the building height limitation on the site, which is 45 feet. And the panels will lay flat on the roof and add approximately 5 inches of height to the building, and once again, not exceeding the height of the limitation in the zone.
And if you could provide some statistics on the panels and the power.
Yes, the total amount of modules is 921, and the power produced will be 572,000 kilowatt hours per year, and this will power about 69 homes annually.
And can you just address existing non-conforming conditions?
Yes, there are three existing non-conforming conditions. The first one is for minimum lot area, where 20 acres is required and 12.3 acres is existing. The minimum front yard setback, where 150 feet is required and 76.6 feet is existing. And the minimum side yard setback, where 75 feet are required and 55.9 feet is existing.
And you had an opportunity to review all the board review letters prior to the meeting?
Yes.
And are there any specific comments that you need to address, or is the applicant going to be able to comply with all the comments?
We will be able to comply with all the comments.
And there were a couple of outside agency approvals. Can you just go through those outside agency approvals and indicate whether the applicant has received those approvals already?
Yes, we have the Somerset County Planning Board approved, and we resubmitted the new plans on April 6, 2026. FAA, we have exemptions. PSENG, a conditional interconnection approval, and the community solar acceptance/extension.
That's all the direct questions I have for the site engineer.
Mr. Holosi, sorry. Mr. Holosi, when you put together your renderings, your plans and so on, did you find that any of the ground-mounted equipment or any of the ground facilities that are required to run this in any way affected any of the setbacks that you mentioned earlier, or are they within the scope of the property as it appears on the pictures that you sent us?
Yes, there's no issues. And if you look at the first page of that equipment exhibit, it shows that the setbacks for each, the side and front yard.
And the utility pole is a function of doing what?
That is what PSENG has for us to tie into the existing grid.
And that's a new pole?
Yes,
And is that something that you're responsible for constructing, erecting?
I believe that the solar works with PSENG.
Okay. So one of them will be responsible. I don't know whether it's PSENG or Solar, the company itself. Do you guys know?
It's usually the utility company.
Utility company.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're adding a new overhead electrical line that connects to this proposed utility riser. What's the height of that?
I believe the height is I don't want to quote me. We could provide details. I'm not exactly sure of what the height is, but usually they're around 14 feet.
Could that impede fire department ladder truck, any trucks that use this site? 14 feet would actually be lower than the posted typical highway bridge clearance.
It's pretty certain the utility company works with fire and safety and just the design standards of New Jersey, and a basic utility pole will be provided.
Okay. Any reasons why you didn't go underground from the existing utility pole?
So as Courtney was stating previously, this was what PSENG proposes to them, and they don't really have much wiggle room to work with.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Mr. Vesio, you're asking specifically about the height of the utility pole, and I think you referenced the fact that this is an industrial site. Not only the self-storage facility, but the whole area has warehousing, logistics facilities, and so on. A lot of very large tractor trailers using the area. Is that what your concern was, or?
Correct. There's an overhead line across one of their access roads here. I'm hoping it's higher than 14 feet because that actually, I think, overpasses in this state or at least 14.6. So you just want to make sure it doesn't conflict with any sort of truck traffic or, the fire department as well. Their ladder truck, that's where you have your transformers, and I guess that's where your inverters are there as well. So that's going to be a,
We could definitely
higher risk area of the
details
facility.
of the utility pole once we have that. I just don't know the
Okay.
specifics right now.
Whose infrastructure is that, though? That's PSE&G's.
It's PSE&G structure.
the
Yeah,
pole?
they're going to put the pole up.
You guys don't have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
What's that?
I don't think they would have anything to do with that, I imagine, right? That's PSE&G.
PSE&G, the utility company.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have a follow-up.
Please.
How does the power get from the building that's on the top of the picture to the second building to that pole eventually? Where's that power running?
There is, if you refer to our site plans that we previously submitted, page 2, there is an underground trench that will go
Okay.
connect each building.
You're trenching in the, huh. You couldn't do the same possibly to the PSC&G pole? Or like have PSC&G put it on the other side of the driveway?
I can't speak on PSC&G what they wanted, but I'm assuming since this is a stormwater detention basin, they didn't want to go through that. But again, I'm not sure what PSC&G's idea was.
But I'm sure your client will stipulate to the fact that the utility pole working with PSEG is an appropriate height to clear the various commercial kinds of traffic that are there, and if necessary, make that a condition of approval. But the idea is just to acknowledge that we have an industrial site, we've got very tall trucks running through it, and we want to make sure that the poles are high enough to provide safe passage for those trucks and any fire apparatus that might go through.
Yeah, no, we'll certainly confirm that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Rose?
Are you designing for the 100-year rainstorm that comes every 20 years or so now, and where you've put things on the ground?
So,
It's wet.
so this is in Zone X, and there is no design standard for Zone X. It's outside of the flood zone.
Okay, yeah. Maybe in that 20-year storm, but these big storms that we've been having lately, they're wet. But just keep that in mind. Someone should keep that in mind when you're putting your stuff on the ground. You might want to just raise it up just a tad.
Any other questions from the members of the board? Board professionals, would you like to talk to Mr. Holosi about his testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Kulak. I really have one question, I guess, to follow up on the underground or the overhead wire. There is a requirement, and in the joint review memo, there was questions about compliance with the design standards for all renewable solar energy facilities on roof and ground, and one of them is that electric and utility wires be buried underground, so I think a design waiver would either need to be sought for that, even if it is PSE&G driving that, or if you're willing to comply as a condition to work with PSE&G to get that wire underground, those are two options.
Yeah, no, we're going to seek the design waiver because trying to get PSE&G to change the design is like almost impossible.
Okay, and then I would just, if the applicant's willing, a condition related to what Mr. Vesio brought up about the height of that wire being checked with at least the fire department as far as height. I think that a sign off from the fire official would be warranted.
Yeah, that's agreeable.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Mr. Burr, questions for Mr. Holosi?
I want to just touch on the exact improvements that are being proposed. I know you gave us an overview of the roof-mounted solar panels. Does each building then have the inverter, or is it just one building that has an inverter?
It's just the one building.
It's just the smaller building? And can you describe for us the height, the size of that inverter? I know that the panels, I think you testified, are going to be flat, and they're only going to be about 5 or 6 feet, or 6 inches high. What about the inverter?
The inverters are about 7 feet high, and there is a detail on the site plan sheet 2. But yeah, they're about 7 feet tall.
Can you just describe for the board what that inverter looks like? Is it just a metal cabinet? Is it?
I believe it's a metal cabinet. Again, I don't design the inverter, so I'm not sure what it officially looks like.
And is it going to be visible? I know it's an industrial area. Can it be screened, or is it set back far enough to where it won't be visible?
It can be screened if that's something that you would prefer. But right now, there is no parapet on the roof, so.
Okay. And then as far as the ground-mounted equipment, I see you have a transformer, and it looks like there's a PSE&G cabinet and panel board. Is that all that's proposed to be mounted on the ground?
Yes, the panel board is going to be building mounted. The transformer is going to be ground mounted.
So the panel board is mounted to the side of the building?
Yes.
Okay. At grade level, or is it elevated?
It's at grade level, but it goes about like 7 feet tall.
Okay. And how big is that transformer?
It's about 50 square feet.
Okay.
And that is about 6 feet tall.
Okay. So in terms of impervious coverage, disturbance, you're really talking about minimal
Correct.
increases, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I know Ms. Sarmad mentioned, or I think your prior testimony was the flood zone X. As far as any other environmental constraints, wetlands, flood hazard area, riparian zones, are you out of all of those other areas?
Yes, we're out of the wetlands area.
Okay, so no DEP permits are necessary?
Nope.
Okay. Just trying to think if I had anything else. We had, in our joint memo, there were 2 comments in our miscellaneous portion of the review about updating the signature block, revising the construction details to provide trench pavement details for the underground connections. You have no problem with making those revisions, correct?
Yep, no problem.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Burr. I'm going to ask if there are any members of the public who would like to ask questions for Mr. Holosi about his engineering testimony. And seeing none, we'll close that section. And Ms. Jennings?
I'll call my planner now, Andrew Janu.
Very well.
Good evening. Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And your full name, please?
Andrew Janu, Janiw. I'll just switch over here.
And Andrew, if you could, for the benefit of the board, give your background and qualifications.
Certainly. Again, my name is Andrew Janu. I'm a principal in the firm of Beacon Planning and Consulting Services. We're located at 315 Highway 34 in Colts Neck, New Jersey. Been a principal in that firm for the past 28 years. I have a bachelor's and master's degree in civil engineering from the New Jersey Institute of Technology. I am a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey, as well as a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. Currently serving as the planner for the Borough of Carteret, Middlesex County, and the Borough of Freehold in Monmouth County, as well as redevelopment planner for Bayonne and South Amboy. In 2022, Governor Murphy appointed me to the State Board of Professional Planners. I've testified throughout the state, as well as before this board previously.
The board accepts his qualifications?
We accept your qualifications, Mr. Janu. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you could, Andrew, just for the record, you've had an opportunity to visit the site and area around the site?
I have. I visited the site. I've reviewed your ordinances, your master plan, as well as the correspondence and review letters related to this application.
And you understand that the relief that the applicant is requesting this evening, and if you could opine in your professional opinion as to whether or not the applicant has satisfied both the positive and the negative criteria?
Certainly. Starting, this site is located within the township's M2 General Manufacturing District, which permits fabricating, printing, publishing uses, research laboratories, and the like, as well as the existing infrastructure that's in place today. Pursuant to your ordinance section 123-335, roof-mounted solar and photovoltaics facilities are designed and designated as accessory uses within this district, meaning if this were a facility that was proposed that was feeding the power back to this, the buildings that are on site, we wouldn't be here tonight. It would be an acceptable accessory use. The differentiation and what distinguishes us as a second principal use pursuant to the interpretation of your ordinance is that the power is being redirected from the site to the grid to be resold to residential customers, 51% of which will be low and moderate income households. While technically it is a second principal use on the site, it's a very passive use, meaning there are no moving parts, there are no employees, there are no visitors to the site unless there's a malfunction. There are no customers that come to the site. This is essentially a stationary installation with a redirection of the power to the grid. And that's an important distinction when you're looking at a second principal use in terms of it doesn't add any essentially intensity to the use of the property. It's not adding any traffic, it's not adding any additional person's noise. It's very passive.
When you talk about that specific issue that we're addressing, and that's essentially why you're here, you have a second business, if you will,
Yes,
on the
I
site.
understand that.
On the site, and that business is a for-profit business.
Yes, it is.
Are the owners of the business and the building, the self-storage facility, the same, or are they different?
Separate.
So they're separate. Is there any relationship, any affiliation at all, just completely separate?
Completely separate and distinct.
Completely separate. So they have or will enter into a lease with the building owner in order to create the second business.
Right.
And what the board was wrestling with in private discussions had more to do with what happens if kind of questions, and maybe you can address some of those. What happens if they want to sell it? Does that change the approval that we've given? Does the approval run with the lease and so on? It got to be, before you answer, it just got to be a little bit confusing as, from my point of view, as I was looking at it, and wondered if you could help us clear it up.
So the approval, like any land use approval, runs with the land. There is a lease agreement that will survive any kind of sale of either of the companies, quite frankly. There's an obligation for the lease term by both parties to fulfill the terms of that lease, to have that equipment in operational condition for the full term of the lease, and then the obligations to dismantle and decommission the system at the end of the lease. So that survives all of that, if you will, but nothing changes in terms of what this approval will require, what conditions there are. That runs with the land, and that survives whatever ownership changes there may be.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So the application tonight, as I mentioned, is to construct a photovoltaic facility on top of these 3 self-storage facilities. We are seeking a D1 use variance because this is now a second principal use on the property. It is an independent business, albeit passive, as I had mentioned, so we will need that D1 relief. We also have existing conditions on the property that were previously approved, meaning the minimum lot area, where 20 acres was required, 12.3 exists and will remain. Minimum front yard setback of 150 feet required, where 76.6 exists and will remain. And a minimum side yard setback, 75 feet, where 55.9 feet exists and will remain. Those are to the existing self-storage facility. We are not aggravating any of those setbacks, nor can we create any more land in order to become more compliant with the minimum lot area. So those are existing deviations that are not impacted or affected at all by this application. Additionally, we are seeking the design waiver to put the electrical service line between the transformer and the existing electrical service via overhead utility pole. The existing PSE&G service that runs along the southerly property line is an overhead service, and that is why PSE&G is connecting through another utility pole. They're going pole to pole, essentially. And and as was testified to before, that's predetermined by them in terms of how they will interconnect it to their grid. If it were underground, they probably would have put an underground service in, but this is a utility pole running along the southerly property line, so they'll be going overhead here. And having dealt with these previously, I am aware that both PSE&G and JCP&L do respect minimum fire clearance and truck clearance under these lines, but certainly that's an acceptable condition of approval. With respect to this application, as you know, we have to reconcile any and all applications with your master plan as well as the municipal land use law. Your master plan's goals specifically state to provide a balanced land use pattern in the township of residential, commercial, industrial, public, semi-public, conservation, public, open park spaces that support residential neighborhoods, maintain and strengthen existing commercial districts, preserve some remaining industrial areas, increase parks, recreation, open space, protect environmentally sensitive natural features, accommodate community facilities and facilities for local and regional circulation without placing undue demands on infrastructure, including roads. we're on point with that. So we are supporting a business that's on the property by providing additional income source to them, essentially through leasing their rooftops. We are providing green energy to the community at a discounted rate. We are doing so within a site that's already been disturbed and constructed without creating any more infrastructure requirements other than a simple connection to the line. There was a question from your engineer about what we're doing to impervious. I think we are at 1/10 of 100th in additional, but we are certainly below what impervious coverage is permitted on this site. It is minimal, and it is essentially the 50-square-foot transformer pad that's the additional impervious on the site. So we will look at something that's properly located. This is an industrial area. This is an existing building that's capable of housing these facilities after being scrutinized by our structural team. So I think we're absolutely on point with the goals of your master plan. With respect to the municipal land use law, this board is aware that variances are not granted for the sole benefit of an applicant. There has to be a public benefit. And I believe there are numerous public benefits that are encouraged by this application. Donna had mentioned earlier that this use falls under what's known as inherently beneficial within state definitions. So under the municipal land use law, A would be to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in this state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Inherently beneficial uses are absolutely on point with that. They're deemed inherently beneficial, and photovoltaic systems are defined within the municipal land use law as something that is inherently beneficial because they address an important community benefit, that is green, renewable energy, and add that this is a community solar system that will then sell back the power to low and moderate income households at a discounted rate. There's certainly something that promotes the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. There is also G, which is to promote sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, and industrial uses in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens. This is an industrial property in an industrial zone. We are using existing rooftops. This is something that will not have any significant visual impact as these panels will lay flat. They're 6 inches above the rooftop. Visually, they won't be a nuisance. They're not creating any noise, additional traffic, additional trash, and the like, which could be a nuisance. So they're properly located. They're located within a district that can easily absorb the impact of these of this system. And quite frankly, they're in an area that is appropriate for this. And in fact, under the municipal land use law, had this been a 20-acre site, it would be permitted as of right in any industrial district. We are 12.3 acres that's under, so again, we're here for the D1 variance, but it is something I believe that is appropriate. And finally, N is to promote the utilization of renewable energy sources. So we can't get more on point than that. This is a renewable energy source. It'll have a 25-year lifespan. It'll provide low-cost green energy to the community. So I do think we meet at least three of the criteria under the municipal land use law that demonstrate public benefit for this application. Which brings us to the D1 relief. As I previously mentioned, this is something that's defined as an inherently beneficial use. Inherently beneficial use, that term was created to deal with a relatively narrow range of enterprises so universally considered to be of community value that municipalities should favorably dispose towards their inclusion. These uses are universally considered of value to the community because they fundamentally serve the public good and promote the general welfare. And these uses defined within the MLUL include, but are not limited to, such uses as hospitals, schools, child care centers, group homes, wind, solar, or photovoltaic energy facilities and structures. The use of the term inherently beneficial stems from a case known as Sika v. Board of Adjustment in Township of Wall, which dealt with a head trauma center. The Sika court held that they recognized the inherent beneficial use of having the head trauma center in the area and instead turned the focus to the negative criteria. Is this something that can be installed and operated as a benefit to the community without creating any undue harm to the immediate neighborhood or to the community? So the Sika court created what's known as the Sika balance test, which is a four-pronged test to go through the negative criteria. The first prong of the Sika test is to initially identify the public interest at stake. In this case, the public interest at stake is the generation of clean, renewable energy for use by a community solar program. The solar array and associated equipment are part of a solar community effort in which community members can join to receive a reduction in electrical bills, and it will generate energy in a clean, green fashion. This is a direct community benefit and a contribution to the welfare of the community. The second prong of the Sika test is to identify the detrimental effects that would ensue from the grant of a variance. So these are roof-mounted solar panels that are essentially flat. Technically, this application is for a second principal use, but visually, it will not have a sufficient impact, and as I said, operationally, it's very passive. There's going to be very little, if any, disruption to the operation of the property as it currently exists today. There was some comment about the inverter being 7 feet tall on one of the rooftops. We certainly think it's reasonable to provide some sort of screening to that if the board so determines that they'd like a visual screen around that, and I think that's practical. But again, this is in a relatively isolated industrial area. It's not having any meaningful impact on any of the neighbors. 3 is to determine whether it can reduce any detrimental impacts, and ergo, we talked about the screening that we can do here, and certainly with respect to how it's situated, nothing else is really visually noticeable. We do have the issue of the design waiver with respect to the pole, but that is something that's dictated to us by the utility, and they are connecting pole to pole, and quite frankly, my experience over the years has been you're not going to get them to change their minds once they've determined that this is how they're connecting. So again, we can address the detrimental impact of the visual of the equipment on the rooftop, but I think it's a de minimis impact at that. And then finally, you have to weigh the positive against the negative criteria. Again, this is to permit a regenerative energy source. It's a low-scale application. It'll provide sufficient energy for up to 69 homes, of which 51% will be low and moderate income households. Renewable energy is widely accepted as something that should be promoted not only on a local but on a state and federal level as well. And we believe when we look at this on balance in terms of what little, if any, negative impacts we've identified, that this certainly is a variance that can be granted. With respect to the design waiver, certainly it can be subsumed under the case law Price v. Himeji, which supports any bulk relief and design waivers in cases involving use variances where the use was not considered or has some special impact on this. Again, the one design waiver we're seeking would be for the pole-to-pole connection with the wire and the utility pole to be placed by PSE&G. And again, reasonable condition would be that the wire safely provides fire emergency vehicles and truck traffic underneath that wire. So having said that, that's the conclusion of my testimony. I do think it's a good application. I think it's something that this community has embraced before, and quite frankly, we're doing a lot of around the state of New Jersey.
Thank you for your testimony. Does the fact that the underlying building operating as a self-storage facility in any way impact the business that's on the roof? And by that I mean, we always think about safety first when we look at making any decisions in Bridgewater. So I've got a solar panel, which is a passive use, as you were describing. Underneath it, I've got individual roll-up doors. I don't know what level of scrutiny the businesses residing in those roll-up doors have. And my concern is, is access to the site limited? Do you have to have a key card to get in? I saw a big gate when I was there today, but it was wide open and I could just drive in to the storage facilities in the back. So there was no restriction to that. And I'm asking the question as to whether or not the level of security provided by the self-storage facility is sufficient for the kind of solar business that you're operating.
So I'll speak in terms of self-storage. kind of more generally, but
Well, this one I'm going to be very specific about.
yeah, no,
because
well, I
it-
was gonna say, I can't speak to why the gate was open today, but
Right.
the time I visited, I had to get access through stopping at the office to get there. My understanding is,
I did both, by the way. I stopped at the office and the gate was wide open, so.
yeah, my understanding is that typically that gate is operated by a key card, only, actually, only tenants that are in good standing can access the facility, because they don't want someone taking out their facilities with unpaid bills.
Right.
My understanding is there is security, there is limitations in terms of how access is controlled. With respect to the buildings themselves, self-storage buildings are something that this is commonly associated with. Again, they don't, other than move-in, move-outs, there's not a lot of activity on these sites.
I would say that's generally true, but my observation today, it was a pretty active, guys pulling up with their vans and trucks and stuff, unloading different kinds of equipment. I would describe them as contractors or businesses operating in that way, which is quite different than the more, some of the applications we've seen more recently for self-storage, which really does seem quite passive in some ways, because people put their stuff there and leave it there and exchange seasonally different things. But this looks a little different to me, and I was wondering if you evaluated that as part of your criteria in terms of providing a safe environment.
Again, knowing there was a gate, and when I spoke visiting the site in terms of getting access, I was satisfied that there was adequate control. And yeah, certainly contractors are people that typically do rent in self-storage facilities, whether it's a plumber or an electrician looking to pick up equipment for the morning run. And my experience in my own experience with my own self-storage facility where my office stores files is typically we try to avoid those between the hours of 8 and 10 and 5 and 6 when the contractors are coming and going. They're generally passive. And then the other experience I've had is, unless there's a college nearby, you have move-in, move-out for college kids that are taking things for the summer.
Do you know if these are open to the roof, the individual storage units, if
No,
they're?
they typically have like a chicken wire across there so that you can't climb over.
Mhm.
But these are metal frame buildings, these are structural steel, tube steel.
Right,
So they are very rigid structures.
okay, thank you.
And I would just add, this is a lot less volume of people coming in and out than some of our other sites. We also put these on shopping centers and industrial warehouse buildings.
Sure.
This is pretty benign use, so the self-storage facilities are actually a preferred roof because there is not a lot of activity.
Okay.
But is that entrance shared, that's shared by the tractor trailers behind the property?
Yeah, they seem to be storing a variety of vehicles behind the storage facility itself. So if you drive just behind the last building, you'll see all kinds of trucks and other things parked there, and it's difficult. It seems to me that that was the only way to get there, but
Google, I mean, I'm looking at the aerial, and if you'd expanded this, you would probably see 36 tractor trailers back there. So, I mean, and there's only one way in and out of there. So then that goes back to this poll, too, that Mr. Vessio brought up as well, from the safety issues on the site. I just think it's a very different site.
Yeah, again, we are committed to the proper height on the wire to make sure that any vehicles, but what's typical and what I believe is happening here is self-storage facilities do have outdoor storage because you're not allowed to, in many communities, you're not allowed to store commercial vehicles at your residence. Commercial vehicles may be stored there, boats may be stored there, RVs may be stored there. I think that's what that open space
well,
is for.
are you telling me or are you supposing? Because right now it appears that,
I saw a mix of those types of vehicles there.
yeah, I did too, and I'm wondering out loud, is that a separate business than the self-storage business? So this would be like the third business on the site?
I don't know. I mean, I was led to believe that it's part of the self-storage business, that you can rent outdoor parking for those types of vehicles. But again, I can't speak as to whether it's the same operator or we just know that that site is operated by our landlord. Having said that, it's still one of the more least conflicted sites that we work with, because we do work with heavy industrial sites, heavy warehouse sites, shopping centers shopping centers with supermarkets where you have trucks coming in all day and they bring food as well as customers coming in. So the activity on this site, even with that element there, I think is still very favorable because it's much more passive than a lot of the other rooftops that host community solar.
Other questions from board members? Johanna?
I do have a question. So your application relies on the concept that the power that you're generating is going to be beneficial to the community, and you've set aside 51% for the low and moderate income. So the rest of the power that's being generated, is there any precedent for adding a condition that surplus energy not be sold to data centers and therefore taken away from the community?
So I think Courtney testified that she believes it all goes to residential customers. So
Residential.
there'll be a community interface where there'll be signups that are promoted through Bridgewater's website, essentially. So it'll be strictly available to homeowners, and 51% of those homeowners have to qualify as low and moderate income.
Okay, thank you.
Or they don't have to be homeowners, they could be tenants.
Mr. Chairman, just going back to the question that our chairman had, Mr. Kulak, do you know, with safety, do you know what type of materials are stored in these buildings? Do they classify as any sort of like high hazard materials? You know, the occupancy use of these buildings, do you happen to know that?
I don't know what the terms are. I do know generally self-storage does not permit you to store chemicals or fuels, paints and the like. But I can't speak specifically to what restrictions there are on these. But they are subject to inspection and code, and my understanding is these are not hazardous storage units.
Okay, I mean, I would be okay with that. I mean, would you agree that if there was, let's say, a high hazard occupancy within these buildings, would you reconsider the appropriateness of putting solar panels on such buildings?
Not knowing what the restrictions are. And again, we're not the landowners or representing the landowners.
All right.
Other questions from the members of the board? Let's see if we can at least hold that question off on the side for a moment in terms of how that would impact your decision. If you had known hypothetically that there were hazardous materials being stored in those units, but we don't know that that's the case, and we don't know it's not the case, so
Well,
I'm
I
not
know,
certain
but
how to
I
address
guess
it.
I would say we have fire sign-off, so I would assume that they would know what's in the buildings.
I really.
We did have the buildings checked out structurally,
Yes,
so
yeah.
I would have went in the buildings and everything else, and I'm sure if they had seen, I doubt your town allows the storing of these types of materials.
Yeah, we do not, right.
Right.
Okay, well, I appreciate that view. Richard, you want to add something to
I have a
that?
question for you on, I guess this was in your package, but there's a letter dated June 6, 2024, addressed to Sean Keegan at Solar Landscape from New Jersey Clean Energy. And, you know, it's the letter indicating there's a conditional acceptance into the program. And it indicates that final acceptance is conditioned on completing the solar installation and commencing commercial operation on or before the expiration date of December 6, 2025. Has that been extended?
Yes, so we'll supply that letter to you.
Would you please? Thank
Yes.
you. Do you know the date?
18 months from that date, we believe. We looked at that because we do a lot of these, so we know what the expiration dates are. So we were just talking about that yesterday.
And we're
so-
around June then,
Yeah,
of this year?
June of
No.
27.
2027,
27.
18 months,
Oh, yeah,
18 months.
Okay, June of 27, so you should be fine, right?
Board professionals. Questions for Mr. Janu?
No questions for me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Armad?
Just two things that came up. One is, in looking at, in the question about the other uses on the property, I guess the outdoor vehicles, it looks like from the survey, I guess the sheet 2 of their plans, there is a note, because Van Vecten is interesting because it dead ends here. That circular portion is still Van Vecten, I believe, because there is an easement for access that leads to that property or leads to that other use. It is on the same property, but it looks like it's fenced off. So we can only work with what information we have from the applicant, but it appears that it's not connected to the storage use. It's connected to the industrial building next door, even though it's on this property. There's a chain link fence shown on the survey that surrounds that whole portion and separates it from the self-storage building. So I don't believe, and I could be wrong, that they're not, I don't believe they're connected, but maybe they do lease it and then they have to enter the property separately, but they appear to be separate uses.
In your opinion, do you feel as though that's an impediment to any of the things we're considering this evening?
Honestly, if they are separate businesses, it makes me feel better, because I think that the self-storage and then leasing that number of spaces, it's not like one space for an RV or a boat outdoors. That's a big field of parking and trailers, and the way that it's set up from an aerial that you can see, and the way it's disconnected from the self-storage buildings, it appears to be to the building to the east.
Right,
It
so
appears to be connected
the-
to that, to the
so-
industrial uses.
But it's on the lot
But
in
it appears to
question.
be on the same lot. Now, I think the separation of them makes me feel better that they're not connected, because the industrial, self-storage is not really an industrial use, whereas, that warehouse or whatever manufacturing building next door is an industrial use, and I would prefer the separation of those two, so that this doesn't rise to a level of, a more intense industrial use for the self-storage that the solar panels are proposed on. But I do think that, it leads to the other question of, how much is going on this property. We did hear testimony from the applicant that this additional principal use, seeking the variance for itself not being permitted the community solar not being permitted as a principal use in the zone, as well as it being an additional principal use. We've heard testimony for both of those variables, both of those variances. So I do think that it shouldn't, in my opinion, it doesn't impact, because I think the testimony we heard is that this is the solar is a passive use. It's not an additional impact as far as traffic or things like that. It's not bringing in more customers. It's not bringing in more people or things like that. But I do think that the questions related to hazardous materials and things like that are definitely valid. I do believe that from talking to the fire official, they go in and regularly inspect these types of facilities.
Yes.
I do think, and that brought up for me the one question or the one condition that I don't know if was raised, that the fire official has at least one condition in his review memo, and I think one being the placard for the solar be put on the building and be visible. That is also a design standard for renewable energy, so I think that needs to be complied with. I would also add a condition to make sure that the fire official signs off on or provides an additional inspection to make sure that no hazardous materials are being stored here. I believe they regularly do it. They at least annually do inspections.
Right.
If that helps the board make their decision. But I would just include that as another layer of condition, that the fire official be able to check for that.
Mr. Chairman?
Please, question? Ms. Rose?
Is that not in the lease agreement with Solar Energy?
Which part? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, the fact that the building doesn't store hazardous materials. I would think you would want that in your lease agreement with the building owner as a stipulation. No?
Well, even if it is, it doesn't mean it's not happening.
Oh, I understand that, but I'm just concerned that that's not included in the lease that you have with the owner, but whatever.
Well, I didn't do the lease agreement, so, and I haven't read it.
No, that's okay, I'm just raising it.
I just want to go back to what Catherine mentioned on, potential third use on this property. I don't think it impacts this applicant, by the way, because I think the proofs are all the same, right? But if there is a third use on the property, I think the landowner would have to come in here for an amended site plan, if that's the case, right? And a potential additional D variance, if they're going to lease out the rear of that land to the adjoining neighbor.
And I haven't looked at any prior approvals. I don't know. I don't know what.
I don't think it impacts this application, by the way. I
No.
just think it's something for zoning to look into, right?
Yeah, and I will take a look. I'll take a peek to see if there is a prior approval within, the last few decades that we can uncover, because it may include exactly that may have been part of another site plan application that just hasn't popped up with this one. But I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, and Don, I assume that you did an Oprah request for prior resolutions?
We did,
And did you find anything dealing with that?
no.
No, okay. Okay.
If I could add maybe a stipulation that, you know, if the building occupancy according to IBC is in the H use group, being hazardous use group, maybe that is something that would be considered, you know, upon approval of this application, or being able to proceed further.
Well, does the condition that the fire official would perform an inspection satisfy that?
I think that would be
I mean, it would be
equal.
specifically
yes,
for that
That would be
purpose.
equal.
Yeah, I think so.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for
Please, Mrs. Amin.
Donna. You know, this was like 3 years ago or more than 3 years ago, I don't remember exactly when. There was an application before us, exactly in the same complex, 2 buildings, right? So was that approved and did that get installed?
They're under construction, right? In construction.
Okay.
Because it is the same company.
Same company, correct.
Yeah.
Additional questions, professionals, board members? So, Mr. Oler, where do we stand right now?
I can review with you if there's an approval, some conditions that we discussed. That would include add the solar emblem signage required by the fire marshal, provide a safety manual to the satisfaction of the township engineer, and I suppose the fire marshal. They'll comply, and they agreed that they would comply with all agency comments and all the township reports. They will verify with PSE&G that the height of the proposed utility riser pole is sufficient for truck traffic to pass under. There's a list of 4, 5 or so conditions in the township engineer and township planner's joint report that you would comply with. And then one thing that is a little open is, for discussion yet, is whether you would require the applicant to screen the inverter, which I think you said was 7 feet
Yeah.
in height. Right? And the fire official would perform an inspection to ensure that there are no hazardous materials stored on the property or within the building.
And Catherine or Bill, do you have an opinion about screening the inverter?
I would like the condition, if the board agrees and the applicant agrees, to be that they, if this is approved, that as part of resolution compliance, they demonstrate proposed screening to the satisfaction of the board professionals.
Okay.
Okay. That was the entire list of conditions. So, yeah, we should just open to public.
Right.
And then the board can entertain a motion to approve subject to those conditions.
So let's open the floor to the members of the public who would like to question or offer an opinion about this project. And seeing no members of the public present, I'm going to close that portion. And at this point, I would make a motion to approve this application with the conditions as outlined. Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
And I'd like to have some deliberation here, some opinions, please. Can we start? Jim, why don't you start?
I don't really have much to say. To me, it's a pretty straightforward application of all the ones I've heard, and I was here when you did the 1.5 years ago, and that went through. So I'm in favor of the application. You're not really doing more good than harm, in my opinion.
Mr. Gajewski?
Yeah, generally, I don't have a problem with the application. I really would like to see just if PSE&G would entertain putting that underground. I mean, look, if they say no, and if they won't do it, they can't do it, that's fine, right? It is what it is. You have no control over that. But if they will do it, I think it improves the safety on that lot. You got active trucks coming in and out. It's not that they could hit it. They could actually hit the pole, right? So like, that's the only thing.
Look, we'll certainly ask, but we've been down this road before.
I get it. You can only do what you can do, right? But that's.
We'll
I'm
certainly ask,
just,
yeah.
You know,
We don't want to cause an issue.
If they could do that, that would, if you would do that, I think that would be great. Otherwise, I'm in favor.
Ms. Rose?
Yes, I believe it's a simple application with the conditions. I would vote in favor.
Ms. Blake? I'm sorry, Johanna?
Oh,
I went
I'm in
blank
favor
myself.
of this application, yes.
Okay. And Tony?
Yeah, it seems that the public benefit outweighs, I don't see any really negatives here.
Thank you. So who do we have all the way at the end there, Jack?
I have one question that just
I'm in
popped in my
favor of
mind.
approving.
The solar panels, they don't give off any radiation or anything like that?
No.
Okay, that's all. I'm in favor.
Mr. Vesio?
Yeah, I'm in favor of this application. I think it's a great use of empty roof space, especially in a manufacturing area. I just had kind of my risk hat on here and just trying to understand that there's a little bit of hazard with solar panels. Doesn't mean, we don't do it. But just want to make sure it's done safely. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Franco?
I think it's inherently beneficial, and I'm in favor.
Mr. Fresco?
Yeah, I echo the other board members. I support it.
Ms. Amin?
Yeah, I will approve it.
Very well. There's a motion to approve the application with the conditions as outlined by Mr. Oler. We have a second on that. And did we have a second? No, I can't remember. We have a second. And then we would like to have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Gieske?
Yes.
Ms. Henderson Rose? Yes. Mr. Fresco?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Ms. Amin?
Yes.
Mr. Waidelli?
Yes.
Chairman Kulak?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Congratulations. Thank you. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll resume at the end of that 10 minutes. And we're going to ask for a roll call, please. Ms. Sarmat, I know it's double duty, but would you lead us through a roll call?
A reminder. Chairman Kulak.
Here.
Mr. Weidelli.
Here.
Ms. Amin.
Yep.
Mr. Franco.
Here.
Fresco.
Here.
Rose, Henderson Rose. Mr. Gieske.
Here.
Wiseman. Here. Mr. Vesio.
Here.
Mr. Colucci.
Here.
Mr. Bignella.
Here.
Mr. Oler.
Here.
And Mr. Klein.
Here.
And Ms. Sarmat here.
Very well, thank you. This is the second hearing this evening. This is application 24-029ZB, Rockland APV Bridgewater Energy LLC, Block 338, Lot 9, 760 East Main Street. And we will open up with Mr. Pantel.
Evening. Pleasure to be before the board again. You're correct, this is obviously our second meeting. And I'd like to let the board know where we intend to go this evening with testimony.
I'm just having a little trouble hearing. I want to make sure that mic is on. Is that light lit?
This is on?
Okay,
You
that's
hearing me?
good. Thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. So I do want to let the board know initially what we intend to do tonight with respect to our testimony. We did actually receive from your engineer on Friday, this past Friday the 10th, his April 9th engineering report, which did raise a number of technical engineering issues, which our engineer, Mr. Stiers, will be addressing and will be presenting in testimony, but not this evening.
Okay.
Okay, I think it makes more sense to let him work through those issues in the interest of efficiency and perhaps confer, obviously, with Mr. Klein, who provided that report, to work out as much as they possibly can. So in lieu of proceeding with testimony from Mr. Stiers, by the way, whose plan is up on the board, that was Exhibit A3, just to orient the board from our last meeting. We will proceed with testimony, with a little bit of wrap-up testimony from Joe Brown, who was the last witness at our first meeting, who had been testifying as the representative of Trina Solar, which is installing and will be operating and maintaining the system that we have here. He already provided extensive testimony with respect to installation, operation, and maintenance of the facility, and of course how the BESS is an integral part of the grid's storage and utilization of solar-generated power, including, somewhat coincidentally, the sort of power that, of course, could be generated into the system from the application that was just approved by the board, because that was apparently here before this board because it wasn't an accessory use. They're going to be generating solar power into the grid, if you will.
Right.
And we also have with us this evening Leonard Dianarine, who is our fire safety expert. We heard from you, indeed, personally, Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting, how safety is obviously a question that the board has and would like to have addressed. And Mr. Dianarine is here to testify in that respect. He has prepared the emergency response plan. He was in prior contact with fire officials in Bridgewater as well as in Somerville, and also prepared a report that responded to some issues that had been raised as a result of an incident that occurred in Arizona some 7 years ago. And we produced a very specific report responding to what transpired there. Essentially, without, I think, stealing Mr. Dianarine's thunder, pointing out how our current application is kind of a textbook case of fixing and implement the issues that had arisen in that Arizona situation, and very importantly, implementing the recommendations that had arisen as a result of that Arizona incident. So that's all I'll say about that, because I'm wanting fire safety testimony from me.
Two issues. One has to do with that original inquiry about that fire in Arizona that took place some time ago.
Right.
But you can do a search anytime and find fires as recently as December of 2025 in lithium battery energy storage facilities, some of which, quite frankly, just are mind-boggling to watch. So it's not only that one particular fire that I hope he addresses, but looking at the industry as it's matured and still suffering from some of the early technology, perhaps, I don't know. But I'm sure he'll have an opinion about that.
Yeah, he clearly will address that.
Right. And the other thing that you raised, though, and it's a concern that I have, and I think the board has as well. You mentioned that you had met with the fire official from Somerville and from Bridgewater, and yet that meeting did not take place with any participation from any member of this board or its professionals. So we're relying on the original report that we received from the Somerville fire official and the amended report of the Bridgewater fire official, because I don't know how to erase something that we had no knowledge of with respect to the conversation that supposedly took place between the Somerville fire official and representatives of your company or whomever it was that was part of that meeting. So I'm not sure what to do with that. As a legal matter, I'd ask Mr. Oler to opine as well.
Well, let me explain. The genesis of that meeting was that in connection with the submission of this application to Bridgewater, reports were rendered by Bridgewater fire official as well as a Somerville fire official. So in order to attempt to resolve some of the issues and explain better the nature of the application, we felt it was appropriate to meet with them. I wasn't at the meeting, it wasn't a lawyer's meeting, it was just our consultants met with them to address those reports. We're not asking the board to accept the outcomes of a meeting. Obviously, the reports speak for themselves that we've received from Bridgewater, and Mr. Dianarine is certainly prepared to respond and address the reports that we did receive. It's not uncommon for professionals, engineers for that matter, to confer about reports that they receive in advance of a meeting, and that's all that it was. It wasn't...
See, we had no representative of this board present at that meeting, and none of our professionals were present.
And when you say representative of the board, you mean a board professional?
Correct.
'Cause a board member would not.
No, a board member would not be there, but
Yeah,
a board
member would
professional.
not be there, right.
So that really did concern me, and I know that trying to accept the outcome of the meeting that we're not privy to just is asking for us to make decisions on information that we can't possibly have any record of. So,
As I said, we're not asking you to make a decision based upon the discussions that were had with the various fire officials, but what I think would be useful is to hear from Mr. Dianarine, to hear what we are proposing in response to the reports that we have received. You thereafter did receive a report from the Somerville fire official essentially signing off on the application. There's a subsequent report from the Bridgewater fire official, which still has raised some issues that Mr. Dianarine will respond to. So
it concerns me that a fire official would change their opinion based on testimony or conversations that we had no representative that was privy to. So I don't know what took place in that meeting, and it makes me wonder what took place during that meeting, and I think it's wholly inappropriate for that meeting to have taken place the way in which it did, and it brings into question, without trying to impugn anyone's integrity, the integrity of the process, because that just was not an acceptable meeting.
As I said before, I don't think it's improper for an applicant's professionals to meet with or have discussions with reviewers from a board in advance of appearing before the board. They were reviewers who had submitted reports from both Somerville and Bridgewater. We met with them, and we're not asking the board. There was no formal resolution or anything close to that coming out of the meeting. It was a meeting of people who had, from the fire departments, who presumably have some expertise, wanted to hear from our people with respect to an explanation, and we're prepared to present to you on its face testimony from our expert and ask that you consider that testimony and as well as the reports that he submitted. He submitted a very detailed emergency response plan, which was asked for in the reports, and a very detailed report from Jensen Hughes, Mr. Dianarine's company, addressing that Arizona situation, because you recall at one point, shortly before a meeting that had been scheduled, we were provided with a report from Underwriter Laboratories regarding specifically that Arizona situation, and we actually deferred the hearing as a result so that we could take that report under advisement, prepare an appropriate response, which we have in fact submitted to you. So I think it's all totally, obviously 100% above board, number one. And number two, we obviously will rely on the testimony, for the board's purposes of the board's decision, rely on the testimony that we'll be providing, number one. And number two, the reports that have been issued.
So will you be providing testimony that would indicate to the board and/or its professionals as to why the Somerville fire official would have changed his mind about his report, given the discussion that took place outside of the purview of the board?
Of course, we can certainly have Mr. DeHonorine explain what transpired at that meeting, but to suggest the meeting's outside the purview of the board, it kind of goes without saying. When professionals confer in advance of a zoning board or planning board meeting, as with an applicant's professionals, as they often do, or with not...
Our professionals did not confer, though.
Well, I don't know that that's the case.
It is.
Well, I can tell you that I've been practicing land use for more years than I care to admit. Look at my gray hair.
It's fair enough.
Well over 40 years. And I'm sure Mr. Aller, in his experience, has seen any number of situations where after reports are received from a board's professionals or from boards, others commenting on behalf of the board, such as a fire official or environmental commission or whatever it might happen to be, that there is some discussion. We didn't force anybody to go to the meeting. We didn't view it
I'm not
as
suggesting
anything
you
out of
did.
the ordinary, and we thought it would be a constructive exercise to have that sort of constructive dialogue in advance of the meeting. That's all that we did. So, and it certainly weren't purporting to suggest that there would be discussions with any board members. Obviously, no one is suggesting that.
No.
We haven't
It's not unusual that engineers would confer about reports outside of this meeting. I think the concern is that Bridgewater wasn't involved at the same time at an in-person meeting, not something that just happened on a telephone or a Zoom call, or even a Zoom call we could have been, involved in. So I guess if Mr. DeHonoree was at the meeting, when he comes up to testify, he can tell us in detail who was at the meeting and the topics of conversation and what happened at that meeting.
Sure, of course. And the whole purpose of the meeting was to explain better what was submitted, because obviously the application, the bare bones application, didn't address in the level of detail that has since developed in the emergency response plan, the other reports that we had. So again, the only purpose was to have some constructive dialogue. Yes, of course. I couldn't even begin to count the number of D variants and site plan applications that I've had over the years. A battery energy storage system, I say this is probably my first battery energy storage application, but legally it's not distinguishable from any number of other site plan and variance applications heard by zoning boards and planning boards.
I appreciate that, but I think you can also appreciate our sensitivity to this application and the state.
Sure, of course, understood. And that's why we're here with the expert witness that we will be proffering testimony from tonight to address in detail the fire safety issue that's been alluded to. We realize it's out there, and it's incumbent upon us to address it. We certainly intend to do that.
Okay.
Okay?
Anything else, Mr. Oler, that we should address on that line?
We could move forward.
We can definitely move forward. So you were going to ask Mr. Brown to come back and continue his testimony. I think we're at the point at which we're going to ask our board professionals to ask questions of him.
Yes, and there was just, at the end of the last meeting, you might recall, I had just asked him a question about the comparability of what we are proposing on the one hand as opposed to what would be proposed by a governmental authority or a public utility if they were developing a BESS system, and that's when we concluded the meeting. He didn't really have a chance to respond to that.
So did you want him then to continue answering your
Yeah,
question?
there'll be just some very brief wrap-up of the direct as of just a few points to make, and then we certainly would more than welcome questions from the board and from your professionals,
Very well.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
And if anyone's from the public, but doesn't look like we have anybody from the public here. Great.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you.
You have to swear him in again, or?
Yeah, what I'll do is, Mr. Brown, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
And again, for the record, your full name, please?
Joseph John Brown, a resident, longtime resident of Warren. I know I reviewed last time, but just a quick overview of credentials. I've been in the power industry for 28 years, worked for 3 different utilities, Duke Energy, PSE&G, and Con Edison during that time, and now I'm on the sales side, always in power industry.
Great, thank you. So, as you just heard, could you address, please, the comparability of the construction, operation, and maintenance of our proposed BESS system with what might be proposed, on the other hand, by a governmental or a public utility?
And just foundationally, have you installed those similar facilities for a government entity or public utility?
Yes,
The same battery energy storage system we're looking at this evening?
that's correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Please continue.
Municipality, so still a government entity.
I'm sorry?
A municipality, which is
But
still
not a
government
public utility?
A municipality is a public utility for that.
The municipality is the public utility? Are they regulated by the
Yes.
Board of Public Utilities?
That's correct.
And can you share with us the municipality in question?
MWEC, the municipality of Massachusetts,
Okay,
MMWEC is the most recent one that we did for that.
okay.
The rest
Thank
of
you.
them have mostly been private.
Okay. Please continue.
So good evening, everyone. The installation, construction, operations, and maintenance of this facility would be the exact same as any government entity, any utility, similar to what PSEG, Duke Energy, or Con Edison would do. There's no variance on how any of those things would be operated by Trina or its service companies in order to do that.
Okay.
Couple of other notes that were leftovers from the last time I gave testimony, where I think we ran out of time on the questions. There is additional benefit for the battery energy storage system, apart from lowering electric costs for the consumers, minimizing power outages. The fact that this is actually being funded by private equity means it will not go into a rate base and will not cost any of the end users any additional funding from that utility, such as PSEG in this case.
You're going to have to explain that a little better for me because I'm having trouble following you.
Okay. If PSEG was to own the property and the site itself, it would go apply for a rate base increase to the end users, meaning the community and the residents, in order to get them to pay for the capital expense to install and start off the plant, the battery energy storage plant.
So in other words, is it the case when a public utility expends significant capital, as would be involved in this installation, that goes into their capital rate base, which in turn justifies their going to the BPU, for instance, to increase their rates to get an appropriate return on their invested capital?
That's correct.
Is that correct? And what, as opposed to what we have here, which is what?
So in this case, all the capital funding is coming from a private equity who is spending that money and hoping to be able to get a return over the course of 7, 10, 15, 20 years on their investment, while at the same time, that return will be providing additional benefit to the residents.
So you're suggesting, though, that they would not sell the power that they acquire for little to no cost at the highest rate possible?
No, they will, the way that the grid works here is they will put into the auction and the utility, PSEG, will set that price. And if that price can be met, then the system will go into operation. So they do not dictate the price. The price will be dictated by the public utility, which is regulated. So
they can't lower
can't
the
jack
price?
it up to,
And
yeah.
they can't lower it to save us money?
Correct.
But they can refuse to accept the price, right?
Yes. But in this case, because it's not a generator of power, it's going to charge when the price is very low.
Sure.
Usually in the middle of the day or in the middle of the night when solar systems such as the previous will be operating and generating power that is not needed, it will charge at a low price. and then it will discharge when everyone gets home and cranks their air conditioning on, and the demand is very high, and there is no solar being generated at that point. So that variance from when they charge to when they discharge is how the capital private equity will make its money. As a side benefit, the residents will gain the benefit of not needing to send that power in from a far distance away from a power plant in Pennsylvania or down the shore, because that generation was stored locally from the solar and then will be discharged. So because of that, that rate that PSEG sets that the customers will pay will be lowered as a result of the batteries.
Well, I'm not certain I follow the lowering as a result of the batteries. I understood everything you said up until that point, because I also understand that the way in which the grid functions and the way in which prices are controlled, as you alluded to, we're in a situation where the private equity company benefits from selling at a higher price than they acquire the energy. That's just simple math.
Yes.
And as such, they can't lower nor can they raise the price other than that which the auction had dictated.
Correct.
Right? So where I lost you was when you're talking about power to the local grid, because the grid is the grid. I don't think you can control whether the power goes locally or not.
No, but the local nodes, the local area where the power is going to be set based on what power is available in that area or if it has to be sent from a distance. So let's say it's a very hot day in Bridgewater in the evening and there's a very high demand, everyone's cranking their air conditioning, there's not enough power in this region, which happens during the summer every day. Power has to be sent in from Pennsylvania, from a coal plant or a gas plant or whatever. And whatever the cost of that power is, which is usually higher than the price of the battery's charge and discharge, it also needs to be sent hundreds of miles over wires, which have losses. Because the batteries are local without those losses, separate from being able to charge low price and discharge at the higher price, it means that that rate that the consumer is going to pay, that PSEG sets, will be lower because there is a local source that can provide that power without those losses coming in from hundreds of miles away.
And my understanding was that the way in which the grid functions is that it's incidental, it's blind to where the power comes from.
If there's a generation source local, it will drive that price down from the utility when it sets it. The utility looks at all the generation in the area, and they determine what the price should be for that. And anyone that wants to can take it. Anyone that doesn't want to does not take it. The batteries will always take it because they charge low, and then they discharge during those peaks.
So regarding that statement that it's reducing costs, do you have any statistics from prior installation that shows energy costs dropping for consumers after one of these installations went in?
Generally speaking, a battery system will be able to provide power at about 25% the cost of what it is usually generated from a power plant not local. So I can't say a general statement, but because we know there aren't many power plants in New Jersey during the summer that can meet the demand, that 25% will hold fairly true because those batteries are charging when that price is almost zero, and then they'll discharge and provide power locally without those losses, offsetting that high rate from a gas plant out in Pennsylvania.
Right, but you can't reference, say, look, the utility rate in neighborhood X went from 13 cents a kilowatt hour down to 12 because we installed this battery.
No, I can't give the specific for each neighborhood, only that the batteries will provide that power for a significant price lower.
Right. So if you're not buying the power when it's low, then the consumers are using that power when it's low. So if you're buying 20 megawatts of power, you're essentially using capacity and you're raising the cost. You're raising the cost of that power.
No, so
the higher demand of power.
You won't charge unless the price is very low. If the price is very low, the consumers will use it first. And if there's excess power, that's going to drive the price down. And when that price is down, that's when the decision is made, charge the batteries now. If the price stays high, we won't charge the batteries and it won't affect consumers at all. It only offsets the high demand peak in the evening from the low demand peak during the middle of the day. So the battery, in order for it to charge more for consumers, the battery would have to do the opposite and charge when the price is high and discharge when it's low. The batteries cannot hurt the consumer electric rates because by its very function, it will only charge when there's excess power and only discharge when there's more power needed than can currently be provided.
Okay, so at the low rate, when it's off-peak, and you're buying that power to charge your batteries, you're saying you're not increasing the power cost now at the low rate because now there's more demand.
That's right. Because there's excess power they don't know what to do with. And a lot of times that price is zero or even in some cases negative, and you're getting paid to charge the batteries.
Are they throwing that power into the ground when there's excess capacity?
Say that again?
Are they throwing that power into the ground, let's say, when there's excess capacity?
They're trying to send it somewhere else because it's not needed here in New Jersey. So in most cases, it gets wasted.
Okay, understand.
Now, that's the whole point of the batteries, is to avoid wasting the energy that's already been generated.
Okay. So why are utility companies not installing batteries then? If it sounds like, hey, we can balance the loads and add more capacity, why are they not installing batteries?
Because they're expensive.
So you
Fairly simply.
You can do it cheaper than any public utility, pretty much.
No, so in the case of PSEG, the utility is not allowed to own batteries themselves because it would be a monopoly. So the state of New Jersey has opened it up to private equity to come in so that it's not a monopoly, and they provide a competitive bidding process in order to do that. For the answer of why everyone doesn't do batteries, batteries have quadrupled in demand every year for the last 5 years. So everyone is starting to do more and more batteries because of the benefits that they provide. In some cases, you just can't make the batteries fast enough in order to meet the supply currently.
You were saying, too, that some of these batteries are associated with solar farms?
Yes. Yes. Originally, there was a tax incentive that was only authorized for the batteries to get that tax incentive if it was paired with a solar farm. That changed several years ago, where batteries were allowed to get a government tax incentive federally if they are a standalone in a node that demands it that is not near solar. And that drove a lot of these battery projects to areas that have higher demands, which are not in areas where there are very, very large solar fields.
Please continue.
Some other questions that we had were technicians and response time. We have a 30-minute time spot that we're going to allow from any incident that occurs, that will have a local technician be able to arrive on site. Before I mentioned it was a little longer, but the owner of the plant has agreed to subcontract local, so that would be 30 minutes. The plant is operated by HVAC to be able to go all the way down to negative 22 degrees or all the way up to 130 degrees Fahrenheit. If the temperature is beyond that, there is still no safety risk, but the batteries will not operate just because the HVAC cannot keep the batteries warm enough or cool enough during that operation.
And I believe that testimony that you just gave is consistent with your prior testimony, but there you were testifying in Celsius. Correct?
Yes,
So
right.
we've translated to Fahrenheit.
And we appreciate the
Apologize
accommodation.
that. There was another question about the life expectancy. These systems are guaranteed to last 20 years, but many systems are expected to go 25 plus. The guarantee is set at 20, and that's what this system is expected to operate
And the
at.
guarantee is by the manufacturer?
That's correct.
And
When the end of that lifespan occurs, the decommissioning process would look something like everything would power down, all electrical connections would be disconnected, and then all the battery parts would be recycled for beneficial use. They have some high value, and the rest of the products that's left over would all be scrapped. For scrap metal, there's really nothing that would be left on the site after that.
So, but on that point, I noticed that the lease that was provided is a 30-year term, right? So what would happen at year 20?
The batteries can no longer be guaranteed, but they will still be able to be operated. And the guarantee is not a safety guarantee, it's a performance guarantee. So the batteries are still guaranteed to be safe, but they're not guaranteed to have the same amount of energy, just like your flashlight won't work the same now as when you bought it 5 years ago when it was brand new from that battery.
Was it still economical?
It is, depending on what the market is, how much the batteries have been used and they've degraded, and in some cases, if there's a better technological answer to replace it.
Would you expect that in 20 years?
I can tell you in 10 years that the battery technology has advanced to the point where it is significantly better, and the answer is yes. I would expect that. In 20 years, the technology would be better, and we probably would not keep the system in, but that would be up to the decision of how long it's been used up to that point and the owner of the plant.
Right, yeah. And by the way, under the lease, which has an initial term of 30 years, it also has a renewal option for additional 5 years.
There is some space on the site for expansion that is not currently intended to be utilized, but if future technology is deemed to replace or whatever, that could be utilized, but right now there is no current plans to expand the unit beyond it.
And we would, of course, have to return to the zoning board if there were to be any proposed expansion, but I can tell you that none is envisioned now.
And the very last thing I'll go over is just to reiterate that Trina Storage, my company, the same company that's making these batteries, has about 250 sites worldwide that are operating. It has had 0 fires or battery incidents. I'll also expand a little bit about a previous comment with fires that are still occurring today. I would say that the majority of those fires that are occurring today are not new installs, but still from previous designs where there's significant difference. Specifically, the chemistry that's used was much more volatile. Not to get into a big thing, but it was called nickel, magnesium, cobalt. Almost all battery systems that were installed from 10 years ago to about 5 years ago used that technology, which was much more volatile, but it was more energy dense, and that's why it was used. There's been a shift in the whole industry to go to LFP, lithium iron phosphate, which is much, much less volatile and has had significantly less incidents than those previous chemistry that were used for those, which are still, unfortunately, receiving incidents today on those older systems.
Aside from the chemistry being different and the newer technology being available, the newer technology has not been installed for as long a period of time as has the older technology. So we're having trouble envisioning a safety record that's 2 years old versus one that's 15 years old or 5 years old. It's not an apples to apples comparison.
I understand.
And that's where, from a safety perspective, we have to be hyper vigilant given the site selection that you're presenting us with.
Yeah. And my colleague will go over some of the other things as far as the safety systems that have been improved on those, the training. He would be better to go over that. But from the technology standpoint, we can measure the level of volatility from previous and the level that we use now, and it is substantially less, much safer, just from a numbers perspective.
Right.
And that's it for the recap, unless there are future questions before we hand it over to my colleague.
No, what I'd like to do is ask if the board members have any questions of you, Mr. Brown, at this point, and then our professionals have questions I'm certain that they would like to ask as well, if that's okay with you. Any board members, questions?
I have one question.
Please.
I listened to the testimony, because I was out at the February 10th meeting. So part of this project is you receive a grant, or you receive sort of subsidy for installing these battery power?
Yes, a federal incentive.
Okay. Is there any Buy America requirement as part of those federal incentives? Because I know these batteries that were made in China, Thailand, and Indonesia, right?
Yes. So currently, unfortunately, the political landscape changes quite frequently. Currently, there is a Buy America clause for that incentive. Or I should say a non-Chinese supply for that incentive. That's a better way of saying it.
And all of your products are still made in China?
We have China, Indonesia, and Thailand.
Indonesia, Thailand, gotcha.
So how do you...
No Buy American clause, a non-China clause.
Okay, and you will be And that's kind of, you'll be procuring from other countries.
Yes, well, we have all those options on the table. If the owner wants to buy Chinese supply and not get the incentive, that is an option. Or what's more likely is buy a non-China supply to go for that incentive.
And if the Buy America clause were to change, I'm not sure if you're grandfathered in, and actually you would have to have batteries produced in this country, would your operation be viable?
With the supply currently in the United States that's available, it would be very difficult for about 80% of the projects to move forward if that was required. Not to say they can't go forward, but they wouldn't have that 30% tax incentive.
What's the typical
have a couple-
cost of constructing one of these?
So the price of this project would be somewhere around maybe $10-12 million for the equipment. The construction piece would be maybe $2 or $3 million, I'm guessing. And then the operation and maintenance would be extremely low because there's very little that needs to be done.
I have a question regarding the operation, like you will be operating from remote, and will there be anyone visiting the site every so often? How often would they go?
Yeah, so the site will be operated out of a U.S. company that manages the software to run that out of North Carolina. And the only people that would be visiting site are maintenance personnel to check both the air conditioning and the batteries for safety checks and performance checks. And those visitations would occur on a quarterly basis.
The next
How many-
question I have
How
is
many
about
people would
the
be visiting?
system. It gets electricity in to do the charging. And when public service needs electricity, sends it back. So is there a difference to give you the income to operate the system and all that? I mean, when you send it back, you get a higher rate, or you get a little bit higher rate so that you can operate the system and do all the expenses?
Yes, in the summer it would run all the time, like on a daily basis. In the winter, most days it would run. In the spring and the fall, the variation in the price peaks aren't large enough because the air conditioning isn't used that much and there isn't much. So it wouldn't necessarily be operating every day.
You mentioned the maintenance. How many maintenance
Last question
personnel
I
would be
have
visiting quarterly and for how long would they be there?
This system owned by public service, or will that be owned by some other company?
Some other company.
Okay.
Yeah, public, PSE&G is currently not allowed to own them because it would be a monopoly tying into their grid and a conflict of interest.
Okay.
To answer your question, it'd be about 2 or 3 people that would be there for 1 to 2 weeks on a quarterly basis.
I got a question. Excuse me. The last time you were here, I asked you how you communicate between the site and North Carolina, what kind of communications that is in case there's
It
a storm, give me an answer.
It is internet. It was last time, yeah, I had to go check. It is the internet. If the internet goes down, we simply just will not operate the site when it's there.
Site will shut.
Right. The site cannot operate without a
The internet.
connection to the North Carolina company.
I feel better now.
Board professionals,
No, I have
question.
actually-
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wiley?
Since you have these, I guess, air conditionings and all this equipment running and everything, how far away will people be able to hear this operation noise?
So it's tough to answer that question from how far away, but I do have numbers to give. So if you were right up against the machine when it was operating at full capacity on a very hot day, the HVAC system would be about 75 decibels. To compare, a lawnmower runs at about 105 decibels. I understand with this plant or with this specific site, there will be trees that will be placed around the perimeter from the east side that will dampen some of that sound. And then every distance further you go away, so at 200 feet, that 75, just like a lawnmower that's further away, will sound significantly less. So it's hard for me to say at what distance that sound would be, but I do know 75 decibels is what it'll be if you're right in front of it, and there will be some sound dampening landscaping occurring, and every bit further you're away, the quieter it'll sound.
Right, and I can also stipulate, if I could, that we will certainly be in compliance. The township and the DEP have noise performance standards, which are noise regulations, which are performance standards. So all businesses, whether or not they're even ever before a planning board or zoning board, have to comply with your applicable Bridgewater Township and DEP noise regulations, and we will be in compliance with those.
I can also mention that the site, the PSEG substation across the street, has some very large transformers, much larger than what we would have, and this would be quieter than those because of the size difference.
Because I know like at 2 in the morning when it's very still, no wind and very
Yeah.
still air, I mean, you hear a lot more than.
Yeah. We will comply with the standard, but maybe more importantly, we will be quieter than what's across the street.
Street of public service.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you, though, it's 75 times each cell, or 75 total?
75 is the loudest it could get.
Per unit?
Yes, per PCS, the inverters. The batteries are a little quieter. The inverters are about 75, and there will be 5 of those.
75, it's 5 long.
5 things that are generating 75 dBA. Mhm.
Board professionals, so Ms. Armad, Jason, do you have a preference as to who we go first?
If you don't mind, just because I have the microphone.
Fair enough, you have the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did have questions when Mr. Seeker provided his testimony that I believe were deferred to you.
Sure,
So
yeah.
hopefully we can answer some of those questions. First and foremost, what percentage of the existing New Jersey grid is made up of renewable energy sources?
I can't give an exact answer, but in my experience with PSEG and just knowing the market, I would say that right now New Jersey has less than 5% renewable currently. They have goals and incentives to try and increase that drastically, but because there has been no local incentive to try and provide tax benefits for people to bring that here, a lot of those renewable sites occurred outside New Jersey and then send the power in.
I believe New Jersey did have a SREC program for a while that was an incentive program. But I was just asking the question as it relates to kind of the questions of where the energy is, where the batteries are getting their energy from, because we've heard a lot about that these batteries will be charged when the grid is mostly renewable energy. And my question really is if the grid is made of a 5% renewable energy, that means 95% is not renewable, right? Overwhelming majority of it is non-renewable energy.
Yes.
So on what basis are these batteries being charged with renewable energy?
So New Jersey is 5% or less, but New Jersey does not provide the majority of its power to its consumers. It is all imported in from other locations. And in those cases, mostly it's cheaper in Pennsylvania or in Delaware or other locations that send it, and sometimes, in some cases, even further than that. So the excess power, and I'll give an example of Pennsylvania. I don't know necessarily the solar, but there's an extensive amount of wind in Pennsylvania. And that wind does not generate at the time you want it to. It generates whenever the wind blows. And that is excess power that is not needed, that has nowhere to go necessarily except to be wasted. And Pennsylvania has a lot of wind, a significant amount of solar, but I'm not sure how much. I can't speak to New York, but I can say that that 5% that I'm speaking about in New Jersey is very small, to your point, but a large portion of New Jersey's power demand gets supplied outside of New Jersey.
And you don't have that percentage?
No, I don't.
In terms of, though, are you able to provide some estimate as to the power that was going into the grids during off-peak demand, say at noontime when we're taking power in? I believe you had previously testified about that.
Yes.
Could you comment on that, please?
Yeah, so I can mention on a very on a very hot day where the sun is shining, there aren't clouds in the sky, and everyone's going to be running their air conditioning, there's a very large portion of the energy that's being generated at noon, up to 50%, would be renewable at that point. And at the evening of, say, 6 o'clock, that number might drop down to 10 because the solar is gone and the wind would be a fairly smaller portion. So although I don't know the percentages for the entire state or the adjacent ones, during that midday, bright, sunny day, it's a very large portion that goes renewable that all falls off by 6 o'clock.
And in the New Jersey Energy Master Plan, they talk a lot about energy, the composition of the grid, of generation, as well as, storage. And on a challenging, what they call a challenging winter week, the energy is not, sun. That's not all the time. So how is there a guarantee that these batteries will always be charged at times when the grid is renewable?
Well, yeah, if there's not a large gap from the low price to the high price, then the batteries will not charge or discharge. They'll remain dormant unless it makes sense. And that absence of a gap means that there is not a sharp discrepancy between excess energy being wasted and needed from noon to 6. So I would say the batteries aren't going to be used in those cases when, let's say in the winter on a cloudy day where there is no sun, then there might not be a lot of renewable, but the batteries just simply won't operate then because there was no excess energy to charge them at that low rate. They'll only operate when it's beneficial from an economic benefit and for a demand benefit for the end user.
The batteries don't care if the energy is renewable, they just care if the energy is cheap.
That's right.
And is there any guarantee that the energy that New Jersey imports from other states is renewable?
No.
Or is there any
No.
idea that that imported energy isn't from a coal plant?
There is not, but there's a direct correlation with excess renewables and the cost of electricity.
Understood. Now, if this battery facility was connected to a wind farm or a ground-mounted solar farm, how much of that energy would be renewable?
It would still have the ability to charge from the grid or from the wind or solar farm, so it would be no different.
If it was connected to a solar farm, if it was storing energy from a solar farm, would that energy be 100% renewable?
No. So the way it works when you have a co-located site is the solar's going to generate, and if there is demand for the electricity, it will send it out to the grid. If there is excess energy and no demand, at that point, it will charge to the batteries, 100%.
So
But it's not a guarantee.
Are the batteries being charged by only renewable energy in that case?
In the case of excess energy and low demand, yes, the batteries would be charged 100% by that renewable source in that case. But whenever that price is high enough, the solar will discharge direct to the grid and the batteries won't operate.
That wasn't my question. My question was, are they charging by only renewable energy?
No, they can charge from the grid or from the solar plant or the wind. They don't care where it's coming from, even if it's at that site.
Battery would too.
Correct.
It would charge from, it wouldn't just charge from excess solar.
Maybe I don't understand your question. So
I was asking because I'd asked the question previously. There's a solar location about 1,000 feet away from this site. And the answer was, that's a competitor. That's why we don't have a battery facility being proposed directly to a solar farm, essentially. And my question is, wouldn't that be, as we heard a question about why doesn't PSE&G install a battery facility, why wouldn't a solar right at the source basically take in excess energy from the solar that can't be utilized, that can't be sent back to the grid? Why wouldn't they save and reserve excess energy within a battery?
So the battery can do that. The reason why that many times that doesn't make practical sense is because the highest demand areas for electricity do not allow for a large field of solar panels, and that's why batteries are more needed in areas where you can't put windmills or large field of solar batteries.
Okay. The New Jersey Energy Master Plan has a battery storage target by 2030 of 2 gigawatts.
Yep.
What does this facility's total, energy storage / generation or potential generation represent as a percent of that?
20 megawatts out of the 2 gigawatts, so that would be 1%. Is it, are you speaking in gigawatts or gigawatt hours?
Gigawatts.
Okay, yeah, so it would be 1%.
Would be
20
1%.
megawatts is 1%.
So in order to achieve the 2030 goal, 100 of these facilities would
Yes.
be built. Do you know what the status of that target is in the state?
Oh, no, I don't. Because the incentive has not been strong enough for batteries until recently. So I know there's a very low percentage of operating sites in New Jersey because the incentive hasn't been strong enough until recent.
Okay, thank you. You'd mentioned that the lifespan of this facility or the guarantee is 20 years, the lease is 30 years. Have any Trina storage facilities, battery storage facilities been decommissioned to date?
No,
So they've all continued to start up and continue to operate. There's been no need for decommissioning.
that's correct.
Thank you. You'd mentioned that kind of the whole decommissioning plan, what that looks like. I think at the last meeting when you'd brought the prototype out and showed that there's kind of these batteries within a larger battery pack, right? That there's kind of modules within, and that if they are damaged or needed to be changed, that they can be changed out individually, right?
Yep.
How are those lithium phosphate batteries recycled on an individual basis?
Oh, so yeah, we have a company that we send those to, and they extract whatever materials they can out of it, but I can't speak to the details of how they extract it.
Okay, so they're recycled at a specialized
Yes, right.
facility. And kind of in line with that question, because you'd mentioned that the technology has changed, specifically the chemistry has changed from these batteries. Are there any other emerging technologies or other alternatives to lithium phosphate that are maybe better but more expensive?
There are many alternatives. I would say there are none that are currently at scale capable of providing large scale battery projects. And yes, of course, the expense is significantly higher.
Scale because of demand or supply and demand, or scale because of cost?
Manufacturing capabilities currently in existence.
Understood, thank you. I don't remember if you had provided testimony about the fire testing that was conducted and, the temperatures that raised one of these two. Are you aware, I wasn't able to find anything about if there were certain controls or multiple, kind of an experimentation or in a scientific method, if there were controls for that, or if it was just undertaken on brand-new batteries at a certain temperature? Were there batteries that were subjected to extreme cold, extreme heat, damage, puncture, anything that would have added a variable? Was anything added?
So I'll answer in two questions. So all those issues that could happen to batteries are tested at our facility and by UL, a third party as well. Specific to the large-scale fire test, we put brand new batteries in there because they would have the most energy and generate the most heat and be the most volatile so that we could see what the worst-case scenario is. And we turned off all the safety systems, again, looking for the worst-case scenario, and put heaters in to force that whole container into a thermal runaway incident to catch it on fire. And then we put containers next to it, like they would be in the same spacing at this site or any of our other sites. And the container that's only 4 inches away, which is the closest spacing that we have, did not receive any damage. In fact, the inside of the container that was going thermal runaway got to a temperature of 2,351 degrees inside the container. The container next to it, just to measure what impact it has, never went over 111 degrees Fahrenheit. So the barriers in the container itself, with all the safety systems turned off, proved there's no propagation. And the method for that test is not something we came up with. There's a standard for it that is run in order to what process you use, what heaters, where you put it, and everything. And that was followed and I think publicly displayed on video. And then we have reports that we can submit as well.
And that was one time?
Yes,
And it was not repeated?
correct.
And to answer my question, none of those batteries were subjected, or no variables were added to that test? No
No.
cracked batteries, no damaged batteries, no?
No, by process, that's not allowed in order to follow the process for a true test of what is generally accepted as good business practice.
Okay, thank you. I know Mr. Vesio asked about federal incentives. I believe Mr. Seeker had brought up that there was a PJM subsidy for these types of facilities. And I specifically remember that because I asked a question. I believe it was, relayed as a benefit, but I asked, does the consumer essentially pay that cost at the end? Are the ratepayers the one who pay it? And he said yes. And so just to your point before about the benefit of a private company building this and it not having an impact on a ratepayer, I think that kind of contradicts the idea that there is some cost to the ratepayer because there is a subsidy incentive from PJM that trickles down to the customer.
I would have to defer to Mr. Seeker on the PJM subsidy. It's not one that I'm familiar with. The tax incentive I was referring to earlier was a federal one, and because this is not owned by PSEG, there would be no rate base applied to it. But I'm sorry, I can't speak to the PJM subsidy outside of the equipment that I design and sell.
Okay. As far as those peaks that you've kind of mentioned on a daily basis of when the batteries would charge, PSE&G now has programs, particularly with smart thermostats, that kind of are supposed to be, one, ratepayer friendly, so you air condition your house before the demand. It sets up, these smart thermostats are now set that you can opt into these programs and it automatically does that for you so that there isn't brownouts and blackouts and things like that. How does that impact, if they're going to be sharing or they're going to be spreading out demand, how does that impact when the battery is going to charge? Is that going to have an impact?
So it does help the grid try and balance it. It's not a huge percentage, but it doesn't change the fact that the excess renewable power is always going to be in the middle of the day when the sun's shining the brightest and people need their air conditioning the most in the evening. So the majority of the drive for the batteries to charge in the middle of the day and discharge at night, and that cost variance may be impacted, but it would be minimal.
Okay. You'd mentioned that kind of the local, this being local would have a benefit to the community, especially ratepayers, because it doesn't have to, you don't have to distribute the power from far away. For a company like PSE&G, which is not just a Bridgewater specific company, it's regional, throughout different parts of the state. Does that get taken into account that if another portion or another municipality or whatever that PSE&G serves is getting power imported, doesn't have a local facility, is that offset or does that go in the mix and then get redistributed to ratepayers? So our local, to really just question you on what you provided, is the local ratepayer, because they have this facility right next door, actually benefiting, or is it, shared amongst every PSE&G consumer?
So I'll say it's shared amongst all PSE consumers slightly, but there's significant more benefit in the local area surrounding the battery site. An electron is going to go the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance is going to be less wires to travel. So it will support the area around it much more effectively than areas surround. But you cannot control turning left at this wire or going over that one, but it will provide more power locally than it will externally.
Sure, it'll provide that power, but is PSE&G setting the rate overall, or are they setting it to those consumers that are getting the benefit?
They set it at separate nodes, and the nodes will have a higher or lower price, and that is measured. And that node will be affected by the batteries in a positive way if they're local to that node, which is really the case here in Bridgewater.
And Mr. Vesio had asked a question, is there any evidence of that?
I can't provide numbers for what they have for that. PSEG trading, I don't even know if they release all of those, but no, I don't have the specific numbers that I could share.
I'm curious if these battery facilities are being, pushed at the state level as part of grid resiliency, if that, why, those numbers wouldn't be shared,
I don't have an answer for that.
Okay. I think I have one more question. This area, believe it or not, is subject to earthquakes, had pretty significant one a few years ago, at least 2 years ago. Have these batteries been subjected to any kind of earthquake testing?
Yes, they are seismic rated for high-dense areas. I can't remember if it's called Zone 4 or 5, but they can be placed safely in areas like San Francisco or in other areas that are prone to that. So these are rated for high seismic, and it is a standard, not like an optional increase. So what is being placed here is the same thing that would be fine to be placed in San Francisco in a much higher earthquake zone because of its seismic rating.
Have they been installed in San Francisco?
Our batteries specifically, our batteries have not.
Okay. And then, as far as the context of this site, I don't know if you're aware there's a truck, the waste transfer station right down the street. So heavy load trucks are going by this site daily, hourly, all the time. It's a regional truck transfer station. Just up the road about a mile or two, there's a quarry that does blasts. There's quarry trucks that drive this road. It's, a heavily industrial road, not only just normal truck traffic, but like I said, industrial trucks that do, and people, around feel the impact of that with sound and vibration. I know you'd mentioned earthquake ratings, but have there been, consistent vibration testing?
Yes, we've done that in our lab, and each container actually has a vibration and impact sensor in each corner. So 4 of them around, because the risk, to be honest, is not necessarily after it gets installed, but during shipment, and those sensors remain active even after installation. Even though they're basically used to protect it during shipment, it's overkill to make sure that it doesn't experience anything post-installation.
Okay, thank you. Are you involved at all in site selection or
No.
just? Okay. So you wouldn't have any idea about, the size of the site per battery or anything like that?
I just make and sell the equipment, sorry.
Okay. This site is adjacent to a flood hazard area. Is there any, and is subject to a lot of flooding? Have there been any tests about, the batteries going underwater?
So I can speak to the battery side of things. So the batteries are fully sealed. The only thing that's open to outdoor air is the HVAC, and that HVAC is a separate compartment. So even if water was to raise up, over half the container and get to the point where the HVAC intake is, the water would still not intrude into the battery compartment. It would simply trip the HVAC, which would cause the batteries to stop working until things go down. And then in any flooding incident, we would not restart the batteries until we come inspect, open all the doors at every single container to make sure there isn't any damage and intrusion, even though they're sealed, just to be sure.
So that no matter the height of the water, it couldn't penetrate the batteries
That's
themselves?
right. Yeah,
Okay.
if you could completely submerge it, and
Okay.
it is sealed.
Okay, thank you. I know you'd mentioned before that if there's no internet, the site just wouldn't be functioning. How is that, if there is no internet to check, how do you know that it's turned off?
So the site, each battery container has a receiver for the control, and if that control is not read to be receiving anything, it has an automatic ping every 2 milliseconds or something. And if that is not read, then the site just goes into shutdown mode and standby until the connection is restored.
And I'm just asking, what if that malfunctions and overrides? Is there a chance of that?
No, I mean, even if somehow you're manually able to operate the battery, it still has protections in the battery itself to prevent it from operating beyond its normal parameters.
Okay.
So even if something happened, the remote monitoring center, you couldn't force it to do something bad.
Okay. And so I was just going to ask that question about cybersecurity. If it is
Yeah.
connected to the internet, is there a way that this facility could be hacked?
I can't speak to the specifics of all the cybersecurity, but we use an American company that runs the control system for it, and they have extensive experience, a large market share, but I can't say specifically what they use for their cybersecurity.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Klein? That's okay. As long as they get answered, we're okay.
No, the two of the one was the vibration question too, because I'm thinking about, there's instrumentation in there that's fairly precise, and precision instrumentation is not a fan of vibration. Similarly, when you said that it was internet-based permissives, that was my next question, is because remote utility installations that rely on the internet, cybersecurity makes me a little nervous.
Yeah. Even when I worked at PSCG, we have many peaking sites that were remote operated as well, and I believe it's all the same standard cybersecurity used for those as well.
Yeah, I've dealt with it with cell towers quite a bit. And I apologize if I'm kind of bouncing all over the place.
Okay.
I hadn't had a chance to digest all of this previously. You list a 20-year guarantee on these cells. Most of the literature that I've run into and in my digging and reading is listing a 10-year lifespan. Sorry. You're guaranteeing a 20-year lifespan for these LFP batteries, and most of the resources I'm seeing are listing like a 10-year lifespan.
20 years kind of become a standard. Originally, 10 was considered useful. Battery technology has advanced since then. Almost, even all my competitors nowadays, 20 is kind of a standard. 10 might have been common 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay. Piggybacking on the chairman's comments about the lack of incidents on batteries for these LFP batteries, is this because they're that safe, or because there's no track record, or is there a mix of both, would you say?
So from the numbers and the chemistry of it, just because the volatility is lower, I can confidently say they are significantly safer than the first generation of battery storage sites that were put into place. I do agree they have not been in operation for as many years, but I would also say that there's probably 20 times as many LFP sites now as NMC, because each year the number of battery sites is quadrupling. So although the number of years maybe is not as long, the cumulative overall annual duration of how many of them in operation, it far exceeds what the older NMC has been in service.
It sounds like the NMC are being phased out, and the installed base is going to be largely this chemistry until it's replaced.
Almost everyone has gotten rid of their NMC technology for stationary storage.
Okay, you were talking about recycling and decommissioning. Do you discharge the batteries down to a discharge state and then ship them off?
Yes.
Because I'm assuming we don't want to ship energized cells.
Well, I mean, just to be completely transparent, the batteries are shipped new with some charge in it, because if they're sent with zero charge, it will degrade the battery. But that charge is stipulated by national transport laws at 25%.
Storage charge.
Yeah.
The test that you spoke of earlier, is that the 9450 test that was listed in the literature?
No, the 9450 test proves that each little battery cell, which is like the size of my hand, if we force that into thermal runaway fire incident, it will not propagate to the next cell adjacent to it. The test that we recently conducted was of the entire container, the 42-ton, 20-foot container that we set on fire and documented and released to public.
Okay. You said the batteries only charge when there's a gap in rates. So if you have an absence of gap, you're going to have the batteries in a discharged state?
They'll remain in standby, yes.
Okay, and you changed the response time from an hour to 30 minutes.
Yep.
And you mentioned in your previous testimony remote control. Is the only real remote control a shutdown order, or is there more that's done there?
No, so it's remote control and monitoring. So the control obviously tells it when to charge, when to discharge, or when to stay on standby. Those are the three commands. but the majority of it is remote monitoring to check all the temperatures of all the cells, make sure it's operating correctly, determine what maintenance. But that control is really just those commands. Do you charge, do you discharge, or are you on standby? And then there are 5,000 other things that they monitor in addition to that to make sure it's performing and staying safe.
Okay, I only have two more. You had given testimony about emissions caused from a thermal runaway. And a lot of the emergency response, so this may not be you, this may be the other witness, deals with venting to avoid accumulation inside. And how does the venting impact the potential downwind exposure of emissions?
So the emergency response plan dictates that you evacuate to an area of 200 feet, which is deemed full dispersion without any hazardous materials. That 200 feet is dependent upon wind direction, but 200 feet around this site is wide open of any residence or any other structures. So it's considered fully dispersed at 200 feet.
I just have to correct you, the 200 feet of that installation, there are residences within 200 feet.
I don't believe that they're within 200 feet of the batteries, no.
Of the batteries themselves, you're saying,
Yes.
or
Right,
of the, of the?
Right.
Your residences.
Yeah, we're not talking the fence line, just where the batteries are.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah,
they're
but
set.
that's a pretty loose standard for us for you to maintain, that I'm going to be 250 feet from a residence, is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, we're just saying simply that at 200 feet, the batteries are considered fully dispersed without any hazardous combustibles or inhalants present.
Yeah, and I've got residents right across the street, and that line that you're drawing is not a line I'm comfortable.
Bring up the map.
Yeah.
And
You can show me that it's 300 feet, but 300
I think
feet
it's
does not
800 or something.
provide me a safety measure.
Yeah, I believe that we're about 600 feet, actually, so 3 times the 200. But Craig, our engineer, is with us. He can pull up the plan to respond to that. But clearly, the relevant distance is the distance from the batteries themselves, not from a boundary line of the property.
Well, you're saying that within 200 feet of the battery itself, that where does that 200-foot line put you? Still on the property?
Yes.
And does it put you, are the batteries within 200 feet of the Somerset County parking garage facility or any of the vehicles?
Well, I think we're starting to get into site
Mr.
details that perhaps.
It's okay, but a lot
Craig
of,
can-
I'm sorry, Mr. Klein has something he was offering, just you tell me what it is.
the emergency response plan lists the distances from the best enclosure to the neighboring buildings on page 15 of their emergency response plan.
And what does it say? I'm sorry, because I'm having trouble hearing you.
Active disposal is 200 feet from the enclosure to the building. The electrical substation is 160 feet. Somerset County Transportation Office, 300 feet. Juan's Truck Repair, 400. Nearest resident, 560 feet. All of those are approximate.
So what I hear from you, and I appreciate your testimony and your candor, you have a lot of data that we're supposed to infer from what you're saying that it's acceptable, but it's data that you are sharing with us without an industry standard by which to measure it again. So at least you don't have any evidence of that. And as your role as a sales representative for Trina Storage, I get it. I understand the presentation. What I don't hear are enough specifics to make me comfortable. And when you draw a line of 200 feet and say there's not a residence within 200 feet, I don't know how accurate your 200-foot claim is, and you're the only one backing it up, not only you personally, but your company.
No.
If your company has a claim against it and goes bankrupt, there's nothing backing it up.
I understand. So part of that reason is that our fire expert was going to be able to speak more intelligently on that when he gives his witness testimony.
Right.
And I appreciate that. Mr. Klein, did you have something else?
My last one was when he gave the 200-foot dissipation. What's the source of that, or where's it from?
So I defer that to our fire consultant as well for that. It's backed up by data,
Okay.
but he can give a better answer.
That's fine.
Right.
Mr. Gajewski, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a couple of things. What incentives are you getting for this project? Is it federal and state, or is it just federal incentives?
So currently, there is a federal incentive of 30% offered if you meet certain criteria.
Right.
That's the only incentive that I'm fully aware of what the exact number is. There is now, I believe, a state incentive that I don't know all the details, which came about after we started bidding this project, based on the goal for 2030, and I'm not familiar with the details of what that
That's
state
fine. I'm asking if you will be applying for it, if you're aware.
I'd have to defer to the owner.
Yeah, just speaking to the details of that require some public benefit, as I understand it. So if you were to do that, it would require you to provide a public benefit, which I think is one of the things you're saying is part of this application. And then what percentage of BES facilities that are going in globally are LFP technology today?
95+%.
Right, so this is it. There's nothing else. This is a pretty standard BES facility. And is there any way to defeat these safety measures you put in, you're talking about with the isolation, the thermal runway?
So we have some systems that are actuated, but the majority of the systems are passive systems, are barriers in between the cells, barriers in between the containers, the chemistry. So most of the systems are passive. That being said, even though we haven't had any incidents, we cannot 100% guarantee there will never be an incident. It is stored energy. So if that was to happen, we have systems in place that hopefully never have to be used, but if they are used, they're supposed to minimize what that incident will occur. So the majority are passive, that cannot be defeated. There are several other systems in the container, which were all shut off when we did our test to prove there wasn't propagated, that minimize that.
So the answer, I'm sorry, the answer is yes, it can be defeated, or the answer is no?
The majority of the systems are passive and cannot be defeated.
Right, that's all.
I have
And
an
even
operating
excuse me,
question.
Mrs. Amin, just a moment. Even if those systems, as in the barriers that you're describing, degrade over time, they can't be defeated if they degrade over time and are no longer effective.
I'm not sure how they would degrade over time because there are hard barriers.
Part of the possibility that exists is with the constant vibration of which the professionals spoke on that road, constantly wearing away as the batteries rub up against their barriers. Over time, they degrade and they're no longer as effective as they once were. It's potentially possible. I don't expect you to address it specifically. Those are the kinds of things we're worried about.
In
Mrs.
those
Amin,
cases,
you had a question.
Oh, sorry.
I have an operating question. The capacity of the batteries is 20 megawatts, right?
That's the power output of the batteries is 20 megawatts.
And it can hold enough power for 4 hours. After 4 hours, it gets drained out completely.
That's right.
Now, what happens if public service needs more power for longer, then this is out? Or is there some way of charging it back again? Or
So
how does-
public service will not be operating it. It would be operated by the owner, and the owner will dictate when to charge and discharge the batteries.
Now, once it's discharged, the charging is done through, from public service, or does it have a generator or something to?
No, it's charged from public services grid,
Public service?
the
And public
SEG's
service
grid.
doesn't have enough power to charge it up, so then,
Yeah, it will only charge when there's excess power driving that cost down.
okay.
Ms. Rose?
Yes, will customers of JCP and L have a benefit from this? Because part of our township is serviced by JCP and L.
I'd have to ask, I'm not sure, are the two connected in their grid? Yeah, so my answer is, if they are, yes. I don't know if they have separation between them. I don't believe that's the case, and because of that, I believe the benefit will be given to where the electron has to travel least. There is a potential that there is a disconnect between the JCP&L service customers and the PSEG customers, and if that is the case, then it will favor because it won't connect over into the JCP&L.
The question was raised, the scenario was raised that the internet goes down and complex loses connection with the mothership. Does somebody come to the facility before
Yes,
everything goes back online?
yes. Check, yes.
I have a question. The previous applicant that was here was putting in a roof solar array, and they said that it would power 69 homes. Can you give us a comparison of how much your facility will power as compared to what they were saying, the 69 homes?
I believe we did that analysis. Do you remember what the number was, Glenn? It was all
Yes.
the houses in Bridgewater.
I think it was
and then some.
20,000 homes over 4 hours,
Yeah,
over a 4-hour period.
so 20,000 for 4 hours.
Yeah, 20,000. I think we had prior testimony to that effect, but, and I know it's in the papers, I believe that we submitted as well, 20,000 homes over a 4-hour period.
Thank you.
So the solar array on top of the building is controlling the grid, and those 60 homes are likely to be consumed by the grid and could be 20,000, towards the 20,000 you're talking about. Once it leaves the solar array,
Can go anywhere. Into the grid, yeah. It'll be dispersed in the grid.
so there's no guarantee that 60 homes will be serviced, but how they are serviced is really.
Virtual.
And it's not exclusive to homes, your battery storage.
Correct. It'll be dispersed to the grid.
Properties.
That's right. Right. People just use number of homes as a state of measure, and I think when we calculated what it would be, it was around 20,000 homes, a little more than the size of Bridgewater.
On that 20,000 homes, if there's a full, I think you mentioned, if there's a full power outage, your batteries don't supply the grid, correct?
So if there's internet, they can still supply fire, and that is typical.
You're not going to be able to, well, how do you do that? You don't have that much power to power the entire grid.
The batteries have their own power, luckily. They can self-supply their own power and make their connection. So, your internet, just like you pick up your phone, your
If you
internet
have
can
full
connect
blackout of the
yourself.
grid, your batteries will still operate and still
yes.
power on the grid?
Oh, yes. That's one of the big benefits of it, to minimize power outages.
Without a voltage drop, they could do that?
Without a voltage drop? Yeah, I mean, the batteries have the ability to cycle way faster than any power plant because it's immediate on and off.
Okay.
So they will be able to act just like your home generator in your backyard, turn on and power homes in the immediate vicinity or industries.
And Catherine Zarmat, our planner, had a question about the UL. Could you provide her the UL evaluation report or testing report?
Yeah, we have all the UL reports and certifications, and they are can easily be distributed.
I think that'd be good for our professionals to review.
Do you don't have those yet? The UL reports, the documentation?
I believe we only have, I have the emergency.
If not,
response.
it'll make it easier. We'll put it at the top of your inbox.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have all those certifications. We don't sell any products without getting that.
They're not UL listed, correct? They're not UL listed, they're just, you have UL testing, not UL listing.
Yeah, UL certified.
You do have certified. Okay.
Mhm.
Give us UL number?
Yes. So our facility is actually a UL certified number, but yeah, I'll have all the certificates and we can send them over to you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I ask one more question?
Please, go ahead.
It just, something that Mr. Brown had said just reminded me of a question I'd written down but missed. You just mentioned that this could go on faster than any, generate, like residential generator.
A traditional power plant.
Traditional power plant, sorry. I meant to ask that you've talked a lot about scale, about this project, about how it can power a lot of homes. Is there any market or any reason why individual homes couldn't have a battery power generator just like this one?
No, not at all.
And is there any market for that or any opportunity for that as the state starts to turn towards renewable sources and battery storage? Are individual residential homeowners capable of also drawing power, charging a battery when the grid is at low demand, and having a generating source?
Yes, there are systems out there right now, mostly combined with like a rooftop solar on your house that can charge a battery in order to do the same offset for charge in the middle of the day and then discharge to offset your air conditioning at night.
And is there one with that, if someone didn't have a solar, installation on their roof, could they still charge their generator off of the grid and, pay for that energy?
Yes, actually there are some locations, I can't say for sure which, that use their EV cars to offset grid, and they charge and discharge their EV car battery in the same function that I would be using these batteries.
And if that market became more popular, just the way that, EV is an emerging market, where it wasn't, a little over a decade ago, how would that impact a facility like this? If everyone's homes, or at, a large number of homes, because there was, let's say, an NJ incentive program, started to charge up their own batteries when demand was low, how would it impact this? So would there be a new kind of low for energy that would then still make this, a valuable venture? Or would it basically nullify the need for, large-scale battery facilities?
Yeah, so if everyone's home had it in New Jersey, it would definitely impact how the batteries would operate at a utility scale like this. However, those batteries that are in the system that you could put in your house are so small in comparison that you could put one of those on every house in Bridgewater, and it would not be the same as this specific project. So you cannot outweigh the size. Even if it's in every home in Bridgewater, it's probably only 20% of what could be produced at this specific site.
Would they be, I don't mean to go, like for like, but could those individual residential, homeowner batteries provide enough power for that home individually?
Typically, the ones that they sell now are not large enough to do that, but offset some of the costs. So not to speak in actual numbers, but a generator for like a whole house generator is typically 20 kilowatts. Typically, the current solar paired with batteries is something like 5 kilowatts or less. So it's about 25% of what the house would normally need for a whole generator.
Thank you, I appreciate that. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So, Mr. Brown, thank you for your testimony. We appreciate your coming back and sharing your information with us. Rich, where are we now? Because we have...
First, just for the record, there's no public and no public cross-examination of this witness.
Correct.
And is there any redirect?
No, not at this time.
Okay, so I think we're done with this witness, right?
Right, and yeah, unless we
bring 'em
decide to bring them back for some redirect, but at this point, I don't intend to have any redirect tonight.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So then, it's the bewitching hour. Time to pick another continuation date.
I believe the next available date is, and I'll give you a few options for your team, Mr. Pantel. July 28th is the next available night. And then thereafter, August 11th or August 25th.
If you give me a moment, please.
Yeah, I'm just curious what you think, because... Yeah.
July 14th, would that really log him in twice?
Oh, he's on.
Scheduling, if it's July 28th, would we be the only item on the agenda?
Catherine, if it is July 28th, are they the only item on the agenda right now?
Right now, the night is open, and we can keep that way for you to be the only.
Good, and that would be the same if we had to choose the August 11th date?
Correct. There's nothing on those nights currently right now, and we can hold them.
Okay. just one.
Glenn, I mean, there's an option maybe for a half a meeting, but I don't know that you want to do that again. You may be better off with a full meeting, and whatever date that you pick, we'll just try and hold that.
Be?
14th of July.
14th is a half meeting.
Well, I'm a little confused because I see, let's see, oh, I see, it's on the 23rd, there's nothing on the agenda, or there is a?
No, the 23rd has two applications that have recently been deemed complete.
Okay,
Completeness letters went out last week, so they've been added to the 23rd.
okay.
The 14th, which there was an application that we had previously heard, the Hinkle application was carried to the 23rd, but they've requested an adjournment to the 14th, which will be announced on the 23rd. They right now are the only application on the 14th, so you could share the evening with them on July 14th, or have the whole night to yourself on July 28th.
Well, okay, give me another half a moment. This obviously is important.
I understand, yeah.
Questions here.
Sure.
What I'd like to do is have us on for half the night on the 14th, and if at all possible, also, because we know we're not going to be able to finish everything on the 14th of July with half a night. And then also, please put us down for the July 28th. We're talking about, over 3 months from now.
I understand.
We would appreciate that if you could.
Catherine, I'm not sure if, on the schedule, how that works. You tell me.
So we generally, I think this came up at a previous hearing, we can't hold that date because we have, between now and then, we have probably six applications that may need to be carried. And so we can't hold a date because then it's only going to backlog further other things. So as those are heard, we can't hold the date for anybody. Your carried date is the only date we can guarantee.
And that would be the 28th.
That'd be, well, or.
Want the whole day.
Or July 14th, did you say? July 14th would be half a night.
July 14th, you can have half the night. If
Right.
you end up getting carried, then it's an unknown if any of the other dates I provided to you will be available. Highly doubtful, I'll say, because we have other applications that have yet to be deemed complete, homeowners and big applications. And we have at least, like I said, probably 6 applications between now and then that will be heard. Some of them will be resolved and voted upon. Some of them will be carried to future dates.
So it sounds like your safest bet is the 28th.
I believe that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Might be. One more second.
That's all right. July 28th?
Yeah, we'd like to have that whole night on the July 28th. If we could have an announcement made by the board that will be carried to July 28th with no further notice, 7 PM in this meeting room, I trust.
So for the purposes of the public, this meeting is being adjourned at this point. It will be continued on July 28th at 7 PM in this room, and there will be no further notices from the applicant. Okay.
Great.
And we are going to hold that for the entire night for you.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Pantel, thank you. Thank your witnesses. We appreciate it.
Thank you. You, July 28th.
So Rich, is there anything else we need to discuss, or can we adjourn this meeting?
I think we are good to adjourn.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.